Okay, we're live now. Greetings and welcome to the Breakfast Club. I'm Got That Funk. That's Rob. Fuck, Rob.
There you go.
Oh man, yeah. It's midnight where I am, 7 p.m. where Rob is, and yeah, we were just about to talk a little bit about what's been going on over the past week or so since we last spoke. Um, yeah, just before we came on live, we were talking about President Trump's tweets. I believe it was yesterday now, where he
Yeah.
was saying liberate Virginia, liberate Michigan, liberate Minnesota. And from my point of view, that's like unambiguously a call to arms to
Yeah,
overthrow the
it's by
elected government of the
definition.
state. Mhm.
By definition, it's sedition, which
Right.
is a crime which carries a penalty of fines and up to 20 years in prison.
Wow.
Um, so I mean, it's a very serious, it's a serious offense for anyone, let alone the president. But yeah,
Right.
it's sedition. That's the word for it.
It's even more serious because it's the president, because the president has authority and influence and so on. Oh, hi Phoenix, by the way. Yeah, the president has authority and he has an army of idiots who follow him. And there has been, whether or not it necessarily has to do with Trump directly, there's this whole behind the scenes right wing underground that's been very active ever since before Trump became president, and they're all doing this shit online and all this organizing that's been going on behind the scenes. I read a very disturbing article yesterday in the Huffington Post about it, and yeah, they're the same people that are doing all that are also behind a lot of the facial recognition technology that's starting to take off. And in a year or two, Rob, you'll be able to wear like Google glasses, but you'll be able to see the names of everybody that you're looking at based on their facial recognition. If there's ever been a photograph of them on the internet, which is most people,
Yep.
not everybody, but most people, you know. And so like, I mean, let's just say thank goodness that I think I saw today. I didn't pay that much attention to the news until about an hour before I came on tonight because I needed to have a break from it for a while today. But when I did have a look just now, I saw there's like another demonstration today. I'm not sure which state it was in. It might have been Virginia, of like hundreds of people lined up with their flags in a big gathering, you know. And I absolutely support people's right to protest, of course, but we're having a fucking pandemic. You've got to take it seriously. These people are only going to wind up sick in 2 weeks, you know, or getting other people sick in 2 weeks. And I just, where are we? You know?
We're through the looking glass, man. We are, yeah, we're through the looking glass. I mean, these people don't believe that the death toll is as high as it is. They don't believe that the virus is as contagious as it is. They don't believe that the government is telling them everything. Um, it, it's it's nuts. I mean, I had a back and forth with someone last night on Facebook where he was just like, "Oh, all you leftists, all you leftists are just you're scared, you're afraid," and it's just like, yeah, yes, yes,
Well, I personally am not like afraid of death in an abstract sense, but I'm afraid of dying in the physical sense.
and
I
now
don't want to
see,
die. You know what I
yeah, no,
mean?
but what I said to him specifically was, yes, I'm afraid that some shit kicker like you is going to get my mom and dad sick. My dad is
Right,
75 years old.
right,
He doesn't deserve to suffer because some shithead decides that he doesn't trust the government.
right, right,
So
right.
I mean, it's an extraordinarily selfish thing. I mean, and they keep talking about their rights are being taken away. What rights are being taken away? Name one.
Well, the fact that they're out there demonstrating shows that no rights are not being taken away. They're still demonstrating, despite the fact that it's actually been ordinance that you're not supposed to gather in groups and everything like that. They're getting away with breaking a law, even though they're still exercising their rights. And so I can understand it on an I'm exercising my rights level, but you can't complain you're not exercising your rights while you're demonstrating exercising your rights. That doesn't make sense, you know. So they are exercising their rights, but unfortunately, their rights are going to get them killed in this case. I mean, you know, it's you could argue that's their prerogative, but when it comes to viruses and diseases in general, it's your prerogative is also not to infect other people.
Right.
You know,
Like we have
so
we know for a fact, obviously, that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We know that we
yeah,
have this virus that is circulating amongst the population.
yeah,
People are saying things like they have a right to be able to go to state parks, public parks, and state parks. Um, and because of the lockdown, their rights are being infringed on. You know what? You have a right to swing your fist, but that right ends at my nose. So
right,
if we know that we're dealing with a virus that's going from person to person, your right to be outside and to go to parks and that kind of stuff and malls, you know, when it starts to infringe upon me, that's where your right ends.
sure.
So, I mean, yeah, it's
Well,
a famous. I know Bionic Dan says it all the time. At least used to say it all the time. Your right to swing your fist stops at my nose.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's the way I see it. And besides, and you, I don't know how it was 30 years ago when you last lived in the States, but now you have to pay to go to a state park. You have to pay a fee to get in, which means you don't have a right to go to a state park, even when there's no pandemic. You do not have a right to go to a state park. You have to
Right.
pay a fee. It's a privilege to go.
Wow. Well, like I don't know. I personally think that when it comes to the pandemic has so many dangerous sides to it in terms of like the way the authorities are able to exploit it and this kind of thing. I mean, Trump's hyping these people up. It's no secret that these people going to these demonstrations are Trump supporters, right? And he's turning the fucking virus into a partisan issue. Are you kidding?
Now,
Come on,
while he's
come
doing that, yeah, he's doing that while he's blaming the Democrats of doing the same thing. Like he's saying they are politicizing this, but no, the only one that's politicizing it is him. Um,
it just blows me away. I mean, I don't. I just hope people there can see it because from where I sit, it's pretty effing obvious. You know what I mean?
now my brother is a Trump supporter, and back in early February, before it was publicly known how bad this virus was, when it was really just being reported about, really only in China. I saw him at my mom's for her birthday, and they were talking about it on the news. And my attitude at the time was, because I didn't know anything about it, was, lots of people die from the flu, right? It couldn't be that serious. That was what a lot of people were saying back then. And he
Sure.
was like, no, 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 this is really serious. People are dying all over the place. Now he's saying the exact opposite. Now he's saying, oh, this is a hoax, and the media is blowing it out of proportion, and the Democrats are politicizing this. It's like, dude, how did you move in the wrong? You were right. You were right. Now you're on the wrong side now. Um,
Well, what blows me away is when people say about hoax and stuff. I mean, how do you get a hoax in Italy and Spain and Iran and all these countries all around the world at the same time? You know, and some of them are handling it better and some of them are handling it worse and so on. You know what I mean? I mean, America is handling it the worst, I have to say, in terms of just
yeah.
overall deaths and stuff.
Well, that's the thing
Um,
is they don't believe that these people are dying. That's part of it. Is they just don't believe it. That they see the stories on the news and they say it's bullshit. It's bullshit. They just don't believe that the death toll is what it is.
because it's in whose interest to lie about it.
The news agencies.
Wow. I mean that just speaks of so far gone paranoia that I don't even
Yeah.
know how to address that rationally.
It's a very conservative libertarian point of view, where none of this can be. My brother, what he had said to my mom apparently just the other day was, all of a sudden nobody's having heart attacks, nobody's dying of other things, everything is COVID, and it's just like, yeah, no, nobody's saying that. Just
Yeah.
because they're not telling you the numbers of other causes of death doesn't mean that they're not recording those. So he seems to think that everybody that dies now is just being labeled as a COVID death.
That's absolutely not true. I just saw a chart yesterday on Twitter, which had all the different causes of death, and COVID at the moment is the second largest cause of death in America, and it's almost
behind
over heart disease.
behind heart disease, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, there's something else. Who the hell was it? Dr. Phil. I mean,
yeah.
Dr. Oz was bad enough, but Dr. Phil went on Fox News and said, more people die a year of car accidents, and nobody's freaking out about that.
Right,
Car accidents aren't contagious.
right. Like my kid could have figured that out when he was 6 or 7. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I actually tweeted to Dr. Phil, um, gave him an eighth grade science lesson. Um, yeah, I hope Oprah can get her money back from those guys.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Pretty much everybody
Wow.
she's had on, all those
Well,
people she made famous.
I don't know. I don't know anything about that. I'm kind of glad I don't. I'm glad I'm ignorant of these people because I've only just come across Dr. Oz in the past couple of days. But he was the one who said, "Oh, and you might have a 2 or 3%, mortality rinse. Like we're just okay with rinsing 2 or 3% of America. I mean, 2% of America is like 7 million people.
Yeah,
You know what I
opening the
mean?
schools. He said, open the schools. You'll have a 2 or 3% mortality rate, and that seems like a good idea. Guy's nuts.
Yes. So let's move on from griping for a second and talk about what's the best way forward. I mean, like, because I know everyone's going, we can't move forward with testing, and in this country, this is a big issue because the government's not providing the PPE that they need in the hospitals, and they're not providing the testing that's necessary, and so forth. And like from my point of view, it should work something like this. They should test all the people working in the healthcare service and first responders. That's the people they should test first. Simultaneously, first, they should test everybody entering this country from abroad because you still have 15,000 people a day, believe it or not, coming in the country. Um, then, second of all, they should test everybody who's still in the workforce right now, people working in the shops, and everybody who's out. If anybody tests positive, they need to go into isolation. And then people like me who want to get off of my ass and get back to work, they should test us. And if you test negative, you should be able to go back out to work.
The
You know,
problem,
then they should test people to go into school at the very end. The school people should be the last people to go back.
the problem with testing everyone is you can take a test and it comes back negative, and 2 days later you're positive.
Well, that's certainly possible. That's
Um,
certainly possible. But what I'm saying is if you test these people in order first, like you're testing the people that are already out there first, and then test the people who are locked away coming back out last. So they should everybody that they're already coming into contact with should already have been tested. You
right.
know, that's
I think
never going to be perfect because it's in the air. You know what I mean?
I think it is. My own opinion is I think they definitely need to expand testing because they need to see how deeply into the communities that it's gone. They need to see the extent of the spread of the virus. There are some estimates already that are saying they think that 80% of the population has now contracted it, and I don't know if I believe that or not. You know,
There's no way to know
that's one
that. You
estimate.
might as well just pick a number out of the air. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
well,
to know.
and that's it. I think it's more important at this point is to test for the antibodies.
Sure.
That way, you get a pretty good idea of who's already had it. And then you can take plasma from those people and use that to work on a vaccine.
Which is definitely an important step. But I've noticed in South Korea, they've had some people who've contracted it twice now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that whether you've contracted it gives you sufficient antibodies or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think
I think there must be some of us who've been carriers for a while, but we haven't been symptomatic in any way. And what I want to know and what I haven't been able to find out is if you're a carrier but you never develop symptoms, how long does it live inside you? Does the fact that you don't develop symptoms, does that mean by definition that your antibodies kicked its ass? Or is it just living inside you waiting to spring its trap at some point?
that's another question. Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think whether or not, like, there are some people they're talking in China too. There's a resurgence, and I think it could be like chickenpox. You can get chickenpox when you're a kid, and if you didn't have a bad case, you can get it again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, if you
Usually
had a
comes at shingles later. No.
yeah, well, that's what anyone that's had chickenpox can get shingles later, but you can get chickenpox
Yeah.
twice if you didn't have it bad the first time.
Right.
Those who had a pretty bad case of chickenpox are usually protected. So it
Right.
could be that kind of a thing. It could be like that. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not, you know, a virologist or immunologist, but you know, I mean, those are some basic facts that we know exist out there already. You know,
Yeah,
they're
sure.
already in the wild. So
I didn't get chicken pox until I was 29 years old, and I got it so bad. And we were driving from LA to Santa Rosa, where I come from in California, which is like about a 500-mile drive, and it was about 95 degrees. I was bursting out in chicken pox. Oh my God. Oh, it was awful. And my
my
skin
kid,
was never the same after that.
my kids got the vaccination, so they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, right.
They got the vaccination, so they'll never have to worry. Then they won't have to worry about shingles. So good for
Yeah,
them.
yeah, too right. I'm not even sure if there was a pox vaccine when I was a kid. I know
No,
that we got all the other vaccines though when I was a kid. You know, all the smallpox and measles and all that stuff.
yeah, I think the chickenpox vaccine came out in the '90s.
All right, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. How's it going, Josh? You feeling better now that you're all satiated with your dinner?
Yeah, that's how long it took me to eat a pound of sushi. So now you guys know
A pound of
exactly how long.
sushi.
Yeah, now you guys know exactly how long that takes me. But yeah, you guys were talking about the legal stuff, and I found that interesting because of my paralegal studies background. And I think it's interesting that the people who think that these orders are illegal don't intentionally get ticketed, because that's how you would challenge it, right? Is you get a ticket and then you would fight it in court, and then you'd fight it all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Sure.
And I wouldn't recommend that anybody does that unless you have a total understanding of the law. Like you're either doing it as a lawyer or with somebody under the advisement of a lawyer, because I don't.
Doing it under advisement of the president, Josh. Surely that's good enough.
Well, so I mean, they could challenge it, and that's the interesting thing is that I don't think we've ever had a president state that like to go against governors, because that might be something exculpatory, or at least it might lower the charge if they're able to fight it. Because I mean, it's unprecedented. Like I don't think I've ever run into a case in the law where that's happened. And none of this is meant as legal advice, of course. I'm not a lawyer, but yeah, I mean, like if you really want to challenge it, you would take it to you would get ticketed and then take it to the court and then make an argument that this does not pass the bar. Because even in like the most conservative Scalia, you guys remember Scalia, right?
Of course, yeah.
In his opinion on DC versus Heller, his opinion was that there's no such thing as an unlimited right. So essentially backing up the idea that you can swing your fist until it gets in contact with my nose.
Right.
And so, but what kind of balances that out, and what the Supreme Court has used historically, is the idea that there's the public welfare versus the individual's rights. And so they give the federal government, the executive branch of either the state or federal government, power to declare a national emergency or something to that effect, in this case, a health emergency. And then that gives them power to restrict those constitutional rights. And so what you'd have to argue is that the order is not constitutional, or that the measure of it is wrong, so that the state or that the court could
the restriction was wrong in the first place is what you'd have to argue, wouldn't you?
Could then strike it down as unconstitutional, and then that ticket and any other charges brought to anybody in that jurisdiction would be waived. And if that happened on the state level, it would definitely go to the Supreme Court. But this is obviously a welfare issue. Like people are literally dying in the thousands in the United States.
Right.
Like there's no
like 5,000 people a day.
Yeah. There's just not going to be a good argument. I'm not even sure if a state level court would take that up, but they should, just so they could, because it'd be the first case and they could put it in its place and just say, hey, we're not going to listen to these types of cases anymore. But
well, I mean, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, at least, that Rob, you were saying a minute ago that a lot of people don't believe that as many people are dying as they're saying, but there's actually a lot more evidence to the other side, which says that they're undercounting or deliberately undercounting the numbers. There's more evidence to support that conclusion. And how is that any different than what China did? I mean, or Iran for that matter. I mean, a lot of countries are accused of undercounting their numbers because they don't want to make it look as bad as it is, because it obviously reflects on the leadership, you know?
Yeah.
So to me, it's the idea that the numbers aren't what they are. It just doesn't. I don't know. You've seen the mass graves that are digging on that island in New York, didn't you? In that photograph, I don't even know how many coffins are in there. Do you? I don't know.
Fortunately, I've not seen that yet. That sounds heartbreaking.
Hart Island. It's a Potter's Field on Hart Island.
Yeah, that sounds devastating to see.
Yeah, it is devastating to see. And, you know, I've seen the picture. I'm sure we've all seen the pictures of like hospitals like stacked with bodies in the corridors and stuff.
In my county, it made national news. I don't know if it went international, probably because it was on the cable networks. But in my county, less than a half an hour away from my front door, there's a nursing home where they had 68 deaths associated with the nursing home, and somebody had called an anonymous tip to the police because they had 17 bodies stacked in a outdoor shed.
Oh.
Ouch! That's grim.
That is, and I take it that's Corona related.
Yeah.
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 Wow. So I guess they didn't want to report them or something, so they just stashed them.
Yeah. I think the bodies were because they have it's a long-term care facilities and a nursing home,
right?
And they have a morgue, an in-house morgue that can hold 4 people, and
okay.
So somebody comes and picks up the bodies. They do whatever it is they do with them. But they were dying faster than they could handle. So
right. Wow.
Yeah, and I hate that skepticism is being used as a justification for being stupid. I'm just skeptical of the government, skeptical of the numbers, but it doesn't mean that they're lying. And I mean, Occam's razor would suggest that they're probably not lying unless you have evidence to the contrary. It makes more sense for them to report accurately, right?
Right.
Or if they're lying, it makes more sense that they're undercounting on purpose because they don't want to make it look as bad as it is.
Yeah.
So if they're lying, if your supposition is I can't trust the government, well, hey, I'm with you. They're probably telling you the wrong numbers, but they're telling you too little, not too many. You know, because that's what's in their interest. It's not in their interest to tell you too many. It's not in their interest.
Like half of that. Okay. I have a friend on Facebook who believes there's only been about 2,000 or 3,000 deaths because most of the people that have died from COVID-related illnesses have been pneumonia and heart attacks. This is therefore it's not COVID. And I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense. Nobody dies directly from COVID-19. They die from the things that are associated. They die from heart attacks.
COVID causes your lungs to fill up with fluid or causes your heart to stop.
What I did was I compared it to HIV for him.
Yeah.
Nobody dies of HIV. Nobody has ever died from AIDS. There's not a single person that ever lived that died from AIDS. They always die from complications because of AIDS.
Right.
But directly from the virus, no. It's the same thing with COVID. It's not COVID that's killing these people. It's the complications that COVID causes. So, yeah, some people don't seem to grasp that apparently extremely subtle nuance. I don't know.
Right. Well, what I find interesting is, like, 22 million people have lost their jobs in the past 3 weeks, right? The government, as far as I'm aware, isn't making any moves to cancel rent or suspend bills or anything, whereas people are running out of work, they're going to run out of money. And all of this is happening, and people are protesting that they can't buy grass fertilizer or get their hair dyed, not the fact that they're being screwed and they're going to go broke in like 60 days. You know what I mean?
Different states and different communities, and there are some coalitions of states and that kind of stuff have come up with some different ways to deal with some of that stuff. There are places in the country where rent is being forgiven. There's other places where like mortgage payments and rent is being furloughed, where you're going to go 3 months and not pay anything. And
Right.
then the fourth month, you have to pay that month's rent plus the other 3 months past, which makes absolutely no sense, but that's what they're doing. So it really depends on where you live.
Right.
There are some cities that are basically on executive order where you know, things like rent and mortgage are being just kind of dealt with. So it really depends on where you live.
Here in this country, they talk about doing that stuff, but no, they as far as I know, it just goes around in a circle and nothing's actually happening in terms of suspending the rents or suspending the mortgages or whatever. Or maybe they suspended the mortgages but not the rents. So the landlords are, you know, still getting paid, even though they're not having to pay that money on, you know. So
my opinion, what needs to happen as far as like the unemployment number, I don't think that the unemployment is as big of a deal as they're making it out to be. Like these 22 million, it's actually probably a lot more. It's probably closer to 30. But 30 million people, 22 million people that are out of work, they're only going to be out of work, at least most of them, while the pandemic is going on. When things start opening up, jobs are going to be there. Their old jobs, a lot of them are going to be able to walk right back into their old jobs.
okay, so let's talk about when things start opening back up again, because here's the thing. If these jerks keep going out and mixing themselves up and having new waves and new waves and new waves, all we're going to have is a seesaw where it's rising and falling in different parts of
and that's the problem.
the country coordinates.
Yep.
We're not going to get anywhere.
And that's the problem. They're crying about their rights that they don't really have anyway, being taken away from them. So they're going out to protest and they're ignoring social distancing. They're ignoring the guidelines. They're ignoring the lockdowns. All they're doing is making it worse.
Right, for themselves.
For everybody. They're making it worse for everybody.
Exactly.
So, you know, but what I think needs to happen, I think the federal government needs to spend a shit ton of money on infrastructure. So while everybody's locked down, the people who work in different construction fields, roads and the electrical grid, the fiber optic cables, the entire thing, the entire infrastructure should be worked on at once. Spend all that money, all those people working, so you'll have a lot of people working. You'll have the crumbling infrastructure finally repaired. And when we all come out of lockdown, there'll already be money flowing through the system and we'll have a brand new country to work with.
Right.
And as far as like other jobs, people still need what they've always needed. There's still the same roughly number of people in the country. We're still going to have all of the desires and the hungers and the wants and everything else. So all of those manufacturing jobs, all of the sales jobs, all those things, they're just going to open right back up again.
Yeah, but there's so many people that were already living close to the edge before the pandemic. And now the pandemic has really brought people to the brink. I mean, you've seen the miles long lines, I'm sure, of cars that are hours and hours long waiting to get a little box of food. You know what I mean? These are tailbacks that go back miles and miles and miles.
I've seen footage of it. I don't understand it though. Like those people, most of them haven't been out of work long enough to have no money at all. That's number one. The jobs just kind of fell out within the last like week and a half.
Sure.
So I mean, so for that to develop to get a box of food, where were they getting their food before? All of the grocery stores. I'm in New Jersey. This is the second hardest hit state in the country, and our food stores are full.
Right. Well, I don't think it's necessarily. I don't think it's an issue of scarcity of food. I think it's an issue of scarcity of funding. I think.
Yeah, but Why do they
the
not
last
have
time
money?
the last time I read a statistic about 2-3 months ago, before the pandemic kicked in, that something like 45% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency.
No, we can't.
So
We can't. Yeah.
so that basically means that you're less than a paycheck away from homelessness.
Right.
You
So these people, a lot of these people, I mean, there's the $1,200 from the government, and that's per person, plus 500 per child. On top of that, they should be getting their last paychecks from their last job. Plus, they're getting unemployment with an additional $600 tacked on top of it. And in New Jersey, which is one of the is the most expensive state in the country to live in, unemployment coupled with that $600 will cover what will equal, for most people, will equal what they were making before. So again, I don't understand why people are lined up for food in a little box. I don't understand why. It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know. I can only guess that I can only guess that they were already living on the edge, and now there's no slack. I've certainly, when I was a single parent, before I had a good job, I was living just literally on the strings. I mean, we barely made it for a few years there, me and my little kiddies.
Here's what,
until I got back to work again.
Here's what I think is happening. I think what you're describing obviously exists. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't. It obviously exists. But I think a lot of those people are deciding not to spend the money they have and are instead going to the food banks when they don't need to, which is,
wow,
on one level, that's smart, right? You don't know when you're going to get more money. You want to put away what you have and hoard, and like somebody in the chat said, they're hoarding their money because they might need it later. On the other hand, there are people that really need the food banks, and you're taking from them.
Sure. Well, I saw an article on Twitter yesterday, and some guy waited 5 hours in the line and got to the front, and the box that he got had like 6 cans of baked beans in it and 2 packs of Kit Kats. And that was it. He waited all day for that.
And he got mugged on his way out for the Kit Kats.
I don't know. I suppose it's grateful that you're getting it, but at the same time, like, that's not food. I mean, that's
not food. Yeah,
that's not
well,
food.
I mean, I don't know. It's not food for most people, but for me, it is.
Well, I mean, I would call it sustenance at best. Sustenance. You can survive for a couple of days on baked beans. I'll grant you that. But yeah, it's not ideal.
My dog got shaved today. Yeah, I didn't get a check either. I'm not getting a $1,200 check. I have zero income. I don't have any income at all. And yeah, so I mean, I get that happens. And yeah, I mean, like I said, obviously there's people that are going to be like that, but that doesn't account for the lines where people are sitting for hours and hours and hours, waiting in line. My dog got shaved today. The situation that they're describing that they're in, yeah, there's lots of people like that, but it doesn't account for the food lines. It just, the numbers don't add up. It just doesn't make sense. And the only way to explain it is that there are people who are doing what I said. There are people who don't need it, but they're doing it because they're afraid that they might. So they're going to hang on to their money and take the free food.
I just don't see people being as patient as they have to be to do that unless they really needed to. I mean, or maybe they're just so like, I got to get out of the house. I don't mind if I have to sit for 5 hours in my car.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's some of those too. But like Phoenix writer just said, people are scared, and people are scared, and yeah, rightfully so. This is why it's important. Jesus Christ, it's why it's so important to have an actual leader, an actual president. To be able to say to people, "Hey, relax. We're going to be all right. I feel your pain." I read something earlier where we're not in the same boat. We're not all in the same boat. We're on the same ocean, going through the same storm, but we're all in different boats.
Right.
And people who are in pretty decent boats, not great boats, but they're not sinking. They shouldn't be sitting in those food lines, and they are, and that's
Right.
scary. That's bad. So
Well, I agree. I think the I mean, Trump hasn't really helped this, obviously, but I mean, there's so much polarization between sides, and what we were talking about earlier about how Trump's sort of politicizing the virus. It's the worst way forward. It shows a complete lack of vision, leadership, or understanding of human nature. Do you know what? I mean, one of the things about Trump that makes him hardest to comprehend is he seems to have no compassion or even a sense of humor. You
yeah,
can't picture Trump making an actual funny joke. You can imagine him trying a joke, but he'd have to read it and it would bomb no matter what the joke was.
right. No, he doesn't joke. Like the only what counts as a joke to Trump is picking on somebody.
Yeah. I was gonna
Like
say
he doesn't tell. Yeah, he doesn't say, "Hey, a horse walked into a bar." No, he doesn't do that. What he does is, "Hey, you see how fat that guy was?"
Yeah.
To him, that's a joke.
Right.
It's a
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around that. Yeah. It just makes me realize, I mean, the guy inhabits his own universe, you know what I mean? He doesn't seem to live in the same world that everybody lives in. And I think that's why he doesn't have human empathy. He doesn't connect with people. I mean, you know, impossible to imagine. Ready? Donald Trump doing yoga.
No, I don't say
You
it.
can't picture it. You can't. Go ahead. Close your eyes. Try. It's not possible. Donald Trump lovingly holding a baby. No. He wouldn't even walk Tiffany Trump down the street when she was a baby because he said, you can't see me walking a stroller down Fifth Avenue, can you? I don't think so. About his own fucking kid.
Yeah. Now, Donald Trump, his malfunction is so deep, it is so bad, and it is so obvious that in some ways you got to feel bad for him because he is who he is, not by his own making. Like this is somebody who was fucked up and scarred as a child.
Yeah, I totally agree.
He is a victim of extremely bad parenting. Not even like just bad, extremely bad parenting.
And I can go with that up until a point, but you know, at some point you have to take responsibility for who you are in your life. You know what I mean? And I think 70 is definitely past that point. I'm not sure. But I know it's way before 70 somewhere, you know?
But he doesn't have an ideological center, though. He doesn't have a moral center.
It's his own fault. It's his fault. That's his fault. He's exposed to all sorts.
It's hard. It's hard as an adult to learn those things that you're supposed to learn as a child. It's already too late. I mean,
I agree. That's got to be pretty hard. And the thing is, he's been with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he's had yes men surrounding him his entire life.
Yep. If you're an evil piece of shit because you decided you wanted to do certain things or be a certain way, and people look at you and say you're evil, you've made a choice to be evil.
Right.
He didn't make a choice. He was just fucked up from the moment he was born. I mean, and not like that him being fucked up was a birth defect. No, it was an after effect of the life his parents gave him. They obviously didn't know how to love. So he has no conception of what it is.
I agree. It's obvious.
He doesn't have the ability to recognize that he's wrong.
Right.
And I don't think anything that you're saying is that he's not morally culpable for the things he does. I think we all agree that he is.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would be an interesting case study to flash back to see all of the trauma he picked up throughout his life, because I'm sure he's been traumatized many times, especially by his dad. I think this is the reason why he talks about people and to people the way he does.
Yeah, I mean, there are reports that his father was not fond of him. And apparently there were other brothers, but he is like the sole surviving brother at this point, and it's the only reason why he has anything.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, yeah, he and it's bad because nobody wants to feel bad, and nobody wants to try to sympathize with a monster. But he's still a person. He's still a person.
He's a person, and he's got a right to his fucked up opinions. As far as I'm concerned, he's got a right to be a jerk. As far as I'm concerned, but he's not. That doesn't give him the right to be the president, or mean that we should be happy that he's the president, or any of that kind of shit. You know what I mean? I mean, he's
he needs
so
to be run the fuck out of town.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, like seriously. I mean, I don't want a revolution. I want democracy restored, though, and if that takes a revolution, so be it, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't really want that day to come, because as I always say to my friends locally here who talk about revolution, they say, "Oh, peaceful protest doesn't work," and blah blah blah, and sooner or later we're going to have to bust shit. And I vehemently disagree with that, because when you talk about revolution, you need to be able to answer the question: what am I prepared to endure? What am I prepared to inflict? And what am I prepared to lose? Because all of those questions are pretty freaking relevant, especially what I'm prepared to inflict. Because if you think you can have a revolution and not participate in it, you're kidding yourself. If there's a revolution, you're either in or you're fucking out. And out is 6 foot under. You know what I mean?
Okay, like armed revolutions. Most of the time they don't work out. Only what, like 2? We can really say that there have been 2 in the history of the world that have really been successful. Hey, Kazoom.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Zoom.
You know, France and of course the U.S. Outside of that, they tend to end pretty badly. That's one thing. Another thing is, like, the U.S. Revolution, the American Revolution. Only a third of the country supported it. You know, at the time, only a third of the colonists really supported the revolution.
Well, and as a side note, you know, we would not have won that war had it not been for the assistance of the French either. So,
right.
You know,
who caught revolution fever from us?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, how's it going, Kazoom? Way up to?
Oh, not a whole lot. I was originally trying to make a video response to a Matt Christensen video about the protests in Michigan, and he was continually pretending not to understand that the main reason why these quarantines are there and why it was bad for people to do the protest is because they could spread the coronavirus more. And he keeps framing it as if it's all about, oh, their whole purpose is getting rid of people's freedoms. And I'm like, no, that's not the purpose of the quarantines. It's just he's so disingenuous in the way that he argues. He's kind of like Caitlin Bennett to some degree in the way that he argues. Oh God,
wow, you know? that says a lot. I mean, I can appreciate, like we were talking about this before you came on. I mean, I can appreciate the argument that you don't want to give up your freedoms, and that you can see that this is very dangerous and all that, because that, you know, the authorities can exploit this situation. I think we need to recognize that, but that's not what's going on right now. People are dying right now. It's happening right now. If no one was dying and they were saying stay in your house, I could dig it, man. I could totally dig it. I'd be marching the street too. If no one was dying, I'd be like, well, look, what's going on here, you know? But people are dying by the thousands every day, and I don't know. You just see, and it's not just in America; it's all over the world. See, this is the thing: when the people who go, "Oh, it's a conspiracy," you have to pull a lot of things to do the same thing in Spain and Italy and Iran and Germany and in Russia and everywhere else that's going on. You know what I mean? It's going on in like 100 countries, for fuck's sake. And people want to say it's a Democrat conspiracy. The Democrats don't have that much power in America, much less the rest of the fucking world. I mean, please.
Yeah.
And see, what I think is funny is, like, what would the motivation be? They just want to restrict our rights to restrict our rights. Damn the economy. When the people who are at the top, the people, the 1%ers and politicians, do best when the economy is running like a well-oiled machine.
Right.
So, like,
yeah,
it doesn't make sense. There's nobody who wants to restrict your freedoms just to restrict your freedoms.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, here's the thing, you know, it just goes to show you that billionaires, they're all keen to get the economy back to work because they're not the ones earning their money. We are.
Yeah. I mean, I do understand.
Huh?
Go ahead, Kazum.
Oh, I was just saying, I mean, I do understand that it's important to get our economy working again. I mean, the economy isn't just a bunch of numbers and statistics, it's people's lives. And there's so many people who are out of work, and people who aren't going to be able to pay rent, they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage, they're not going to be able to buy food. You know, there's if the quarantines do go for too long, it will be a significant problem. And we'll have rioting, we'll have people's houses, their theft will skyrocket, and people, a lot of gun sales that are for, I mean, people trying to defend their property.
How long
and
do you
you
think
know,
people will? How long do you think people will accept a lockdown for in a state that has taken it seriously, like, say, for example, California? How long do you think Californians? You lived in California for a while. How long do you think Californians would go for their lockdown?
I don't know. I can only imagine a couple more months at most, and it's going to be crazy. I think anywhere, just a couple more months at most. And I mean, I'm not saying to completely get rid of the quarantines, but we'll at least have to do some sort of easing up on them to some degree.
And how do you see easing up happening, Kazum? What do you think the best way to get people back out into the world would be?
Well, I don't really have a plan for that. I don't know. I don't know the
Dude,
answer to that.
the dossier has just landed on your desk. It's up to you, bruv. Let's have it.
Yeah, I don't. I'd have to do a bunch of research to figure out what would be the best thing to open up first. You know, and
Right,
things
sure.
would have to be opened up gradually too.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I was saying to Rob before you got on, I was saying I think they should test the first responders and the health workers first, because they're already out there. And then they should also test the people who are working at the moment, already working, you know, people in the shops who are selling us food and stuff like that. They should test all them first before they let anybody who's locked down back out. And once they've tested everybody who's already out, then they should start testing people who want to come back into the workforce, and only let people who are testing negative back out. And so that way you already know that everybody who's out is tested negative. And then do
Yeah.
children school at the very end, because, you know, by that time it'll be summer away and the summertime break will be kicked in. So there's no point. I think this school year is a write-off for everybody. You know what I mean? I think the school year is a goner.
Likely.
Yeah, most people probably are unaware of this, but back in January, I entered the educational field as a teacher's aide. So
Oh, wow.
I was working in a Montessori school, couple days a week, and yeah, this sucks. I mean, I wasn't earning a paycheck. I was actually Damon goes to Montessori school, so I was working off his tuition, which was cool because, you know, we can't afford to keep him there if I don't do that. Yeah, but yeah, so I was working off his tuition. But I'll tell you a couple of things that you probably already know. Kids are germ factories.
Right.
Number one, and number two, they like to touch everything.
Yep.
Yep.
And stick shit in their mouth. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those days. Get that out of your mouth.
So, Paul,
Yeah.
I think that what you're talking about though is with resources we don't have right now, right?
Well, this is why we have to get the resources before we can even think about moving forward. And until we get those resources, we can't move forward. This is why you basically got to get these politicians to put their feet to the fire about the testing. And like Deb said, we got to be testing antibodies or for the actual illness, or both. But we need to get, you can't just let people go back to work if we don't know if they're carriers or not.
Yeah.
The whole thing will just kick back in again, and we won't get anywhere. We'll just have spike after spike after spike, and it's going to go like this all over the country, you know, to where you're never going to get like a common reaction. The country needs to coordinate better. This is what the federal government is supposed to be fucking for, is to coordinate a national response. It's a national emergency. It's not a whole bunch of local emergencies. It's a national emergency. They're all having the same problem. It's like
a lot of
got hit by the same hurricane. You know,
a lot of folks were saying few weeks ago that temperature screenings were going to be a really important thing. But now that we know that asymptomatic people can spread it just as easily as anyone else, temperature screenings are now useless. So
Yeah, I mean they're not totally useless, but they're not going to accomplish the goal of making sure everyone that's out there is, you know. But I mean they did the temperature screening thing in Singapore and they had pretty good results in it with it, but it wasn't foolproof, you know. But everybody coming and going from the country had to get screened with those forehead things, you know, before they would let you in. And if you had any kind of temperature at all, you couldn't get in.
Something that's going to be the most very, very helpful is when they get anti tests where they can see if people are now immune to it, and if they can get, I mean, if they can get that off the ground, that would be a very helpful thing.
I agree.
I don't even know if the immunity question's been answered satisfactorily, though.
What do you mean?
There's a chance that you don't get full immunity by having it once.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's at least 2 different strains that are known of by now, and if we were to allow everybody to get it once, we don't know how commonly or how frequently it's going to mutate. I don't think, because like you get immunized to the flu, but then every year you have to get re-immunized because there's a new strain of the flu out. If COVID does the same thing, where you only get immunized for a season's worth of corona, and there's enough corona out there, then who knows how many times you would have to get immunized to finally eradicate the disease.
Right. Do you believe that it's possible that because of possible mutations, that this could be a civilization-ending pandemic?
Sorry, that this is a civilization-ending pandemic?
Yeah, that it could be.
I think it's a civilization-changing pandemic. I don't think it's ending. I mean, like, at worst, this runs out. I mean, the worst possible way that you could think of this running out is that we stop doing anything, any sort of social distancing. It runs through, and then it becomes kind of like the flu, only deadlier, especially to older people. And then that top age bracket, the livelihood of that age bracket goes down slightly. But I think that we are going to take it serious to some degree, and that social distancing is going to be a more serious thing. I think we're going to be more mindful about like hand washing and using like sanitary products like regularly. But I mean, like, I don't know how this is going to play out. It's harder to see out after 2 weeks what's going to happen. And I do have to do something, so I'll be gone for a minute.
Okay. I do think if they let this virus run wild and we didn't practice any kind of control measures whatsoever, that it has the potential to end civilization, not because people get sick per se, but because sooner or later, all the healthcare people will get sick and die, and then everyone else will die because there's no one who knows how to take care of the healthcare people, and society will collapse from the inside out because we won't be able to stop it anymore. You know what I mean? It'll just keep going.
Well, there's still only a certain percentage that it ends up killing. It's there are some people who go through it and don't have they don't get very many symptoms. There's some people, as was said, who are completely asymptomatic. But I mean, there's so many people who have gotten through it already, who have survived it. So I don't think it's
the number of confirmed cases in America versus the number of people who died in America. The death rate is about 5% of confirmed cases. Now, of course, the confirmed cases aren't the whole number of cases because that's just the ones we know about. So obviously, it's less than 5%. I'll grant that a million times over. But 5% is a pretty heavy number, really, of confirmed cases, even. You know,
yeah, but that's not civilization ending. 5% of the population.
No,
let's say everyone got it. 5% of the population isn't the end of a civilization.
No, but what would end civilization? What I'm saying would end civilization is if too many people got it all at once, because then your health system collapses, which includes, I'm afraid to say, the death of healthcare professionals. In Britain right now, we've had this now for about a month, not less than a month since the lockdown, and 50 healthcare professionals have died. Saving people's lives. 50 in a month. You can't sustain that. That's what's that 600 in a year? You can't sustain that.
Now, see, in my opinion, the way I see it is the danger of it becoming or being or ending up being anything that could be civilization ending is the ability of it to mutate.
Right.
So there are folks that are getting it now that are asymptomatic. But what happens when this virus makes another swing around the globe, and we are facing it again, and it's changed? That to me is the scarier part.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like getting things back to going, like let's just take aviation as an example, right? Obviously, I'm over here in the UK, and I have for the past 30 years taken for granted the fact that I can just go to America in one day. You know, now if aviation doesn't come back, I'd literally have to get on a ship, right? That's the only other alternative. The world just got a hell of a lot bigger to me, right? Because I am a traveler. I go places, you know, I like flying places. And I realize that's a luxury. It always was. But now, after the coronavirus, travel restrictions are going to exist. And, you know, once you've traveled someplace, are you going to have to be locked down for 2 weeks every time you come home from going abroad? And if so, will that deter people from going abroad? So then the whole travel industry won't be able to take back off again because no one's traveling because the restrictions are going to be in place. I mean, and so they're just going to keep pumping money, by the way, to all these, you know, airline companies to for whatever reason. I don't understand why they need the money if they're not flying the flights. You're not losing money right now if you're not flying.
Hopefully to pay employees and to cover overhead.
Yeah.
There's some overhead to cover, sure, but it's got to be a fraction compared to what they would normally be doing. But I don't know what
says we should deglobalize.
Deglobalize.
Deglobalize. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made there, but I don't think that it is possible, nor do I would I consider it to be advisable. I think that is a, you know, once the lid is off that, it's off.
I'll say this about that. As far as deglobalization goes, I don't really have an opinion, but my opinion that relates to that is this. A country is most prosperous when it has a strong manufacturing base. In the 1950s and 60s, America had a really strong manufacturing base, and the country prospered fairly well. The standard of living was pretty high. There was a pretty strong middle class that had disposable income, right? For the past 30 years, it's been China that has all the manufacturing, and they have had growth every single year since 1996. Right. We haven't had growth every single year since 1996. And their growth rate is sometimes like 5, 6, 8%. You know what I mean? A year. That just blows us away. And like, that's because they're building all the shit for us and we're the consumers. And then we turned our economy from a production-based manufacturing economy into a service-based economy, which can only work if people are prosperous and have disposable income. You can't have a service-based economy if people can't afford the services.
Right. So, we're suffering from a bad case of late-stage capitalism.
Right. Yeah, perfectly said. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if we start heading more towards a manufacturing based economy again after all of this.
Well, have you been to Coit Tower in San Francisco, Kazum?
No.
Okay. Has anybody, by the way, just out of curiosity?
No.
Right. Coit Tower is like an Art Deco tower that's on the hill in San Francisco. It's quite a landmark. And when you go inside, it's got these beautiful murals all around. It's like a circle. So it's all around the wall, these beautiful murals. And it's all about the workers, people harvesting in the fields and working in the factories and doing, you know, it's all about the workers. And this was at the height of the Depression. All right. That all this was being going on. And the emphasis, and you got to realize they when they had World War I, they had the war and the pandemic at the same time. Right, the Spanish flu pandemic. And the second wave of that pandemic was worse than the first wave. The first wave of the pandemic killed like 3 million people, 4 million people worldwide. The second wave killed between 20 and 50 million, depending on which estimate you believe, right? But the low estimate is 20 million, right? So this is why we've got to be careful about how we get back into the world, because we've got the example sitting right in front of us from 100 years ago, or 90 years ago, of our own cities, and different cities tried it different ways. Some tried to relax their restrictions too early, and they had a huge second spike. You know what I mean? So we've got the evidence. It's not like we're flying blind here. We know what to do, and this is why we should be doing that instead of what they're doing.
Agreed.
So part of it is I think that you have a different priority than some people in the government have, though. Because you want to have a few people get sick between now and the vaccine, right?
Hey?
You want the fewest people to get sick between now and when we have a vaccine, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's possible to open things back up before we get a vaccine, I'd like to try to find a method of doing that. But if you have to wait for a vaccine, you're talking about 18 months, 2 years of people being locked in. And I just don't know if Americans will tolerate that.
Yeah, because I think one of the plans that I've read that's as a possible solution until we have a vaccine is to do these periods of lockdown and then have reopenings for smaller things. No concerts, no sports, none of that. No big stadium events. But then go back into lockdown and then go back and forth until we get to that point. That way because they're trying to balance the economy with the fact that there is a disease. And so they're willing to accept millions of more or thousands of more deaths than you're willing to accept, it sounds like.
Well, if they're willing to accept thousands more deaths, then yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they've already been too much. I mean, I know I make this example every week, basically, but I mean, South Korea and America got their first case on the same day, and they've had just over 200 deaths. You know what I mean? Whereas we've had thousands and thousands and thousands. And so this is why I won't accept it when any of my internet friends say, hey, it's not Trump's fault because he didn't know, he couldn't have done it, he couldn't have done any better. Well, they did, and they knew at the same time we knew. So
we have to also remember, have to remember though that the United States, the size, the geographic size and population of the United States. So, I mean, no matter what, the numbers are going to be higher as far as the deaths go because there's more people and there's, I
agree with that. But I mean, if we locked down just 2 weeks earlier, we'd have less than half as many dead as we do now, right? Just 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks. That's all it would have taken, 2 weeks. And we definitely knew 2 weeks before the actual lockdown started. You could argue about the beginning of February all day long, and I understand why people argue about that period of time. End of February, it was pretty obvious. All you had to do was look at what was going on in Italy in the end of February, and you knew there's a red fucking fire alert. I mean, it was happening. Their health system is the second best rated health system in the world, and it was collapsing, right? So, I and the bottom line is there's I saw a media report today. I don't know how reliable it was, but I saw a media report today that Trump knew back in November. That he was briefed about it in November. Now, I'm very sketchy about I need to see things more than once these days before I believe him. I saw one article, and to me that's not enough to necessarily know for sure that I think that happened. But at the same time, it sort of fits the pattern,
I thought he had in January. I thought there was a private conference in January that he had seen, and then some of the people that were in that conference decided to sell a bunch of stocks right after the conference.
Yeah. Apparently, this one in November was an intelligence report that he had in a private briefing in the White House, and from an intelligence briefing, and he basically decided to ignore it because it wasn't even in the news at the time.
And there are people like China. China hid the numbers. China was lying about what was going on, and I'm like,
okay,
yeah, you think it's China? Of course they were.
Right. That's what I said to Tommy. That's what I said to Tommy from the Bronx. Yeah, of course and this is the thing. I mean, even if you want to give them that story and they say, oh yeah, they didn't tell us and they should have told us. Okay, fine. But frankly, we're the United States of fucking America. Don't tell me we don't have espionage on the ground in China. You seen the size of the city of Wuhan? 50 fucking million people live in that region. Don't tell me we don't have at least one person there who knows what's going on. And if we don't, why the fuck not? It's China, our main competitor. Either way, there's no excuse. You can't. Either we didn't have one, and there's no excuse for that, or we did, and they didn't tell you. then there's no excuse for that. Or they did tell you and you didn't do anything about it. No excuse for that. There's no way around it. You know what I mean? There's no way out. You just, I don't know. I get exercised. Sorry.
It's true. It's true. I mean, that's a guess. China didn't tell the truth. Who would be surprised by that? How is that a news flash?
Well, I mean, you and I are old enough to remember Chernobyl, right? They didn't tell the truth about that either. It was leaking fucking deadly radiation all over Europe, and they were going, "No, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Look at these people dancing next to the factory or next to the reactor and all that kind of shit.
Everything's fine here. We're good. How are you?"
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the thing, and I'm pretty sure if something really, really bad happened in America that we didn't want the rest of the world to find out about, they'd try really hard to bury it. I'm pretty sure we would. You know, pretty sure. Just saying. You know, I think that's why they underreport the dead.
Yep.
I think they're doing it on purpose. They don't want it to, they don't want it to look as bad as it is. You know?
It's a lot harder. It's a lot harder here to bury stories. Big stories. It's a lot harder.
Because of the internet, thank goodness.
The internet, because of the press, just in general. I mean, you know, these people love finding out everything. So.
Not to mention us annoying assholes with a camera, right?
Yep. Yeah, everyone's got a camera in their pocket these days. Most people, anyway.
Armed with a camera and an opinion. There you go.
Right. Well, I think it's a beautiful thing that everyone can take pictures of bad shit. That when bad shit goes down, it's almost certainly going to get caught by someone nowadays. It's kind of sad though when someone's like literally in the middle of a terrorist attack and people go, "Oh, I'm going to film that." You know what I mean? Someone's getting stabbed over there. It happened in London a couple of years ago. There was a terrorist attack, and people immediately just got their phones out and started filming it rather than trying to do anything else other than film it. It's just, this is on the internet, you know? Oh God. You know, what have we come to? I mean, can't have that kind of shit turn into entertainment. We're all lost if that ever happens.
I just think of people actually taking selfies in front of a tragedy.
Right?
Oh, yeah. That's. Yep. That's not new anymore either. But I don't know if it's better or worse than the people that fall into the Grand Canyon taking a selfie.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that'd be a good picture though.
A guilty bystander. I like that. Yeah. Can't see.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just frustrated because, you know, I'm feeling like I'm treading water. You know, I've got things I want to. Finally, I've got something I actually want to do with my life, and now I can't. Whereas for like the previous 3 years, I've had nothing to do, and it wouldn't have mattered. Now that I've got something to do, I can't do it. It's just really frustrating. Yeah. But yeah, that's a first world problem. There's lots of people with worse problems than that.
Yeah, I am. Like I was saying, went on. I'm a stay-at-home dad. This hasn't changed my life a whole lot, other than the part-time gig at the Montessori school.
Right.
This was pretty much what my life was like to begin with. So.
Every time you've said Montessori school, I've thought of monastery school and thinking of you like in a monk robe and stuff.
Yeah, no. That would be fun. Yeah.
So what do you guys think with the election coming up, and Trump seems like more and more hinged virtually every day. And I'm sure everybody watching and all three of you must have seen that clip from Cuomo yesterday. It was about 9 minutes long where he just basically took Trump to task.
I didn't.
You know,
I heard about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I
my
heard about it. I didn't see it.
Oh, he eviscerated Trump, right? It was elegant. He was calm. He was snarky without being like, I don't know. It was pretty well done. I have to say, it was really, really well done. And I think that's what sent Trump over the edge and made him liberate Michigan, liberate Wisconsin, or no, Michigan, Minnesota, and Virginia.
Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All
And
swing states, all with Democratic governors.
yeah, and the thing about Virginia, especially, he invoked the Second Amendment and said, "Oh, you know, you're about to lose." They're like, dude, you're the president. You're the only one who could threaten their Second Amendment, and you're telling them to protect their own Second Amendment. But no, if that doesn't imply a call to arms,
Right.
come on, people. It's
I
so
thought,
disingenuous when they say, "Oh, he's not. He was just saying it because he thinks people should break their social distancing rules." No,
yeah,
no. If people took their guns and tried to take over their state capitals yesterday, he still would have been behind it. He would
right.
have been, "Hey, it's America, man.
I
These
thought
people."
all three tweets I thought were terrible.
Yep.
But when he mentioned for Virginia, when he mentioned the Second Amendment, in my mind, that was a game changer because
Right.
he's telling these people, you know, take up arms. They're coming for your guns. You need to
Right.
protect yourself. And yeah, that's scary. That's like I said, that's sedition.
Now, who's
That's
this they,
bad.
though? Who's this they? He's the fucking government. He's got the Department of Defense wrapped around his fucking pinky finger, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? It's his personal fucking mob. Yeah? Like, Barr
No,
doesn't shit. He's at the end of his career. He even
I
said,
don't.
at the end of my career, I don't care.
I don't think so, though. People have made that argument. Actually, Trump has made that argument where he said, you know, my military, I've got the military. I don't think he does. Um,
I hope
I
not.
I think he has the military as far as if he gives a lawful order, they will they'll follow through. It's what they do. Um, but if he were to overstep his bounds, I don't think he's got the military. Um,
If he called in martial law for whatever reason, even on the most temporary basis, and then there was a protest and he ordered troops to fire, do you think they would fire
no,
on a
No,
citizen?
no, I don't.
I hope not, man. I really hope not.
I mean, obviously, of course, the
I'd like to think they
possibility,
wouldn't.
right? The possibility, of course, exists. I just don't think they would. I don't think they would.
I
I
mean, it
think
happened
after,
in China 30 years ago, didn't it? And so it's so kind of scary to me because I remember Tiananmen Square real well. And yeah, you know,
I mean, look at his not the current acting Secretary of the Navy, the one that just quit. When he went on to the Roosevelt and started bad mouthing the captain that they had just fired,
right.
the crew they were booing him. They were yelling, "What the fuck?" I mean, any senior member of the government or the military should be able to walk onto any Navy ship or military installation and be greeted with respect and silence. And this guy was not.
Right.
Um, that was, I mean, it was as far as military tradition and um, order. You know, it was bad. It looked really bad for the military. As far as how much Trump's administration is respected, it was even worse.
Right.
They have no respect for this administration. So I don't think that they would pull the trigger. I don't.
I hope not.
Discipline. Thank you. There was the word I couldn't find. So
Yeah, I would like to think that that's the case. You know, he does treat the government like it's his own private fiefdom. You know, like there was like a whole stash of ventilators that were due to go to Colorado, and he had the feds come in and seize them. Right? What the fuck? How can you steal it from a state? How can the feds steal from a state? That
FEMA
doesn't,
did it all over the country. Now,
doesn't make any sense.
At LaGuardia and at Newark Airport, the FEMA seized supplies there also as they came in, all over the country. And then they have the nerve to tell the national stockpile it doesn't belong to them.
Right.
Why are you stealing stuff from the states and putting it in the stockpile? What good is the fucking stockpile?
Yeah.
What is the point of having it if nobody can use it?
I don't even understand how they think that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. It literally is like saying 2 + 2 is 5. You know, I can't. What do you think, Kiz? You look deep in thought there.
I basically agree. I actually zoned out for just a moment. So
Fair play. Yeah, what about you, Josh?
I zoned out too for a second there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I mean, like, I agreed with everything that you had said. So when I got to that point, I was looking at Kazoom and he looked zoned out. So I was wondering what he was zoned out about. And that's what
That's
caused
funny. Yeah. Yeah, fair enough.
well, I was zoning out about Mage Grey Wolf said, when we were talking about the military firing on the populace. Mage Grey Wolf mentioned, "Well, just get the police; they'd do it."
Well,
I
yeah,
saw,
right.
yeah, I saw that mage had said that, and I agree. Unfortunately, the military won't do it, but the cops would.
Yeah, and Joe made the point in the very first Jamboree 2 weeks ago that the cops have less penalties than soldiers would have. You know what I mean? Soldiers in war, if they kill a civilian, they're going to get the shit thrown at them. But a cop can do it,
There's
and then they're probably not even going to go to court.
Yeah, no, pretty much forever. The military and the police was pretty much, it's almost as if it was one single entity. I mean, there's so many people in the police force that are former military, that there was this common. It's the same side, and we're not there anymore. And I think it has everything to do with the way Trump has treated the military, and the way, oh, little guy, what happened? And the way the police have been able to get away with everything they've been able to get away with for so many years.
Right.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Yeah, we were talking on the first Jamboree about the cops and how Sister Danger said, if cops got paid a better wage, like say they doubled their wage, because a lot of cops make around like sort of 30 grand a year or plus a couple mix extra, I don't know, but and in America these days that's not a great living. So and you wonder if they're just not getting a good caliber of cops. And I think maybe you could make an argument for paying cops a lot more, but you would also have to demand a better accountability, because paying them more money to be a dick is just giving them more money to be a dick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But pay them more money and say, listen, now you risk losing this money if you don't behave properly. But if you can get the same amount of money working at Walmart as you can being a cop, if you get fired from being a cop, it's like, okay, I'll go work at Walmart. You know what I mean?
And a lot of cops just can go, oh, I'll just go down the street to the next precinct and work there.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like I said, the other when I'm on the first Jamboree, I mean, I'm not like anti-cop by any stretch of the imagination. However, I also do agree that there is a certain personality type which tends to be who want to be a police officer in the first place, and a lot of that can be problematic. It's I've got friends who are police officers, and they're all right people. I've also known plenty of people that I went to school with who became cops and just turned into complete cunts. I mean, I'm not being funny, but they're absolutely awful. And I'm thinking to myself, that's why they became cops, so they could be awful and get away with it. It was, it's just so that there's an issue with authority. Anybody with authority can misuse their authority. That can be a parent or a teacher or a police officer or an employer or a
Well, I mean, it's the same reason why us people who are child molesters will become priests.
Right. Yeah. Because they know that's probably the best place they're going to get away with it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's some of it, but there are some systemic issues within certain police forces. And I'm not saying all police forces. I actually think that this is probably less common than it is that there are more probably good police forces than there are bad ones. But some of the culture in some of those forces is absolutely toxic, like total gang mentality. Like we look out for each other and screw everybody else. I mean, that's sort of a thing.
Right. I mean, yeah, like I said to Joe the other day, I mean, there's a reason a police badge is usually a shield. It's meant to protect you. You know, it's a protection. They're protected by the law because they enforce it. You know what I mean? And it's clear to me, based on how many times, on the rare occasions when some police officer ends up in court because he shot an unarmed person, the judge usually instructs the jury to find him innocent because, you know, he has reason to believe his life was in peril and blah, 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 and all this kind of shit. And it's like, hang on a minute. You can't. Police are just people. They have a job. Their job isn't to kill people. Their job is to protect people. And so, like, when a cop kills someone, they should be held to a higher standard, not a lesser standard. They're the ones upholding the law, so they should be held up to a higher standard than average citizens. You know,
Police are not people.
Which way are you trying to dehumanize them, Dev? Superhumans, or they're awful?
They're awful.
Ah,
yeah.
They're automatons.
I'm sure there's some good cops. I mean, in this country, I've come across a lot of really decent cops, I have to say, but I've also come across a few that you're just like, wow, how did you get to be a police officer? But you know, in this country, I mean, I feel like I can talk to cops. I can walk up to cops in London in the middle of a you know, rowdy protest, and they're fine. You know what I mean? They're not intimidating in any way. That has a lot to do with the fact that they don't have guns. You know, so.
Yeah, I'm sure that goes into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta ask just a random question. What does your shirt say?
It doesn't say anything. It's just a bunch of graffiti nonsense.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's literally just a bunch of scribbly graffiti. That's why I like it so much. Yeah. I don't know why I think I had this. I bought this to sell in my shop, but it never sold, so I kept it.
Okay.
A lot of my t-shirts are t-shirts that never sold, you know, which is fine because everything I bought I liked as well, so it all worked out in the end. Because when I had my shop, I sold clothes for the first, I don't know, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4 years or so, and then I just had a bunch of leftovers at the end, and I just kept the stuff that fit me, you know, so, which included some pretty cool stuff. You know, not this. This is just a t-shirt. Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you one.
yeah, yeah, do it.
It's purple velvet. Jacket, like a duster coat. See, there you go, that way. It's beautiful. I love wearing that.
I mean, I have to give it to you, Paul. By far, you're the most fashionable member of the Breakfast Club, I think, in its entire history.
Well, thanks. I'll take that compliment for what it's worth. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, I love my colorful shit. You know, all my tattoos are colorful, and pretty. You know, I like that shit. I'm all about it. And yeah, that's I had a conversation with my son like 2 summers ago, because my son's a bit of he considers himself to be, in his words, a moderate conservative, right? And so we have interesting conversations. And 2 summers ago, he was all, you know, you might remember about 2 years ago, there was a bunch of talk about people who are transgender, right? And I have to say that, you know, I accept all human beings as they present themselves to me. End of story. I don't care. To me, people are people are people are people are people, and I don't really care. So that's how I feel. But I was talking to my son about it, and you know, when I was a young man, I'm talking about my late teens and early 20s, I was having what I think at the time would have been nowadays considered to be some kind of gender identity crisis, because I liked everything like colorful and bright and pretty and beautiful. I'm really a big fan of beautiful. I love beautiful, man, you know, and I want things to be pretty, including myself, right? And that didn't fit what people told me men were supposed to be like or be about. and you weren't supposed to present yourself like that. And then thank goodness for me personally, Prince comes along and is like, you know what, you can be beautiful and masculine at the same time. You don't have to follow that shit at all. I was already getting that a little bit vibe from David Bowie, who I was also a huge fan of. But I always thought David Bowie was bisexual, and therefore I didn't necessarily think it. I thought it might have been just because he was bisexual. But then Prince, I knew for a fact was, I mean, all you have to do is listen to his music and you know he's all about the pussy, right? So I knew that he was very sort of masculine and still very beautiful, and that was okay. And it gave me permission to feel like me. So I just felt like, at the time, I felt like I wasn't wrong for the way I wanted to look and feel. Society was wrong for wanting me to feel the way that I did. Against that, society is wrong to try to make me fit into this mold of what they thought men were supposed to be like. Whereas nowadays, it seems to be more like they're saying, no, I just don't really understand the conversation sometimes. I feel like I have I guess what you call a feminine streak in me, but I'm still very masculine. So I don't feel like it's a conflict to me at all. But I think some people feel that way, but don't get the acceptance in their life. So because they don't get the acceptance, it's a conflict for them.
I just never understood why anybody cares how other people identify or present themselves.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. People are people. People are people. If you treat me with kindness and respect, and you treat other people with kindness and respect, I'm 100% going to give that back to you. I don't give a shit how you present. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just, to me, it's really easy. And if someone's a dick, I'm going to give that back to them as well. You know, it doesn't really matter how they present. If they're a dick, I'm going to treat them like a dick. If they're not, I'm going to treat them like they're not.
I mean, it's like the Iggy Pop thing. You know, saying it's shameful to dress like a woman is basically the same as saying being a woman is shameful.
Yeah.
Really, no. I mean, I know that there's plenty of things that I don't understand about gender and stuff like that. But for me personally, I mean, like I say, I went through my little conflict there. But at the end of the day, I feel like a masculine man who just likes pretty shit. And I don't see either one of those things as contradictory to each other.
Dream Machine said natural fear of weird
things. That they're contradictory. Huh?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's right.
Green Machine said natural fear of weird things. What constitutes weird?
Well, I think
Something that differs from society's messages, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was a kid, Dev, and I moved from Larkspur in Marin County to Forestville in Sonoma County. And because I was new in school, nobody knew much about me. And it took about 6 months before everybody in my whole school was calling me weird. And at first, I was only 8. So at first I was like really resistant to it, you know, but then the next school year started and I was getting it even worse the next school year. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm weird. So what? And yeah, what? You know, like that. And I've been comfortable with it ever since the age of 9, because at the end of the day, it's only if you're happy with who you are and you accept who you are, it doesn't really matter what other people think. And if they want to put the name weird on it or any other label that they choose to put on it, that's their thing. It's not, I don't have to hang myself on their word. You know what I mean? They can have their word. That's fine. I'll let them have it. Fine. Whatever. Put your word on. I don't care. It doesn't for me. Go ahead.
I'm happy that things have changed so much in the past 20 years to where there's almost nothing that's too outrageous looking anymore. You know, I mean, it's really changed. I mean, you're right. You find people working at regular department stores that have blue hair and have tattoos and they have piercings. Whereas 20 years ago, you know, you had the strict dress code. You can't have
You couldn't get a decent job if you looked like
so
that.
Much.
Yeah. Hi, Sue.
Hello. Talk about the right time. I actually, speaking of weird, I was actually voted the weirdest chick in my graduating class in high school. So talk about perfect timing.
Oh, come on. How come I find that so hard to believe?
Oh, no, I can see it. I can see it.
Hey, the thing is I've never really followed the trends. I've always been kind of a trendsetter, if you will. I like to start my own trends and see if people will follow anyway. I've never anything that I don't know if this has happened to you guys, where something that becomes kind of popular, it's like, I used to like it, but now, well, it's popular now, I don't like it anymore.
Oh yeah, yeah, that happens all the time.
Oh yeah, I do that a lot. And I, because I always did things that were just not the usual me, not just like different stuff. And it got to the point, and it was funny when we did these mock election things at my high school. They came up to the people who were organizing this. They came up to me cautiously, and they're like, "Are you going to be offended by that?" And I just smiled and I said, "No, I'm not." And they just slowly backed away and walked away because of that. So, hey, I don't mind it at all. I like being weird. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, like I say, it's a perception that other people put on you. I mean, you just be yourself, and if you're happy with it, it doesn't really matter what other people hang on it. It doesn't matter.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And I remember it was fun when I did in 2015 for several months. I did the whole purple beard thing, and I wore makeup and all that.
I remember.
And,
yeah.
That was a blast. I've sometimes considered doing that again, but it gets expensive. So.
Yeah, I suppose, and it is a little bit of I don't know. I mean, I've worn makeup off and on in my life. In my 40s, I went through an eyeliner thing, because it does accentuate my eyes, and I like that, I do. But unfortunately, I live in a world where people judge that in a way which, quite frankly, I don't actually care about their judgment, but it just gets tedious after a while because it's like repetitive, like every single person. It's like when I had my blue beard, right? I actually liked having my blue beard. And if I could have took it off and put it back on at certain times, that would have been great. But when I walk out at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday to go to the shop, I don't really want my blue beard. Or when I'm at work, I don't really want my blue beard. But if I want to go out and put on an outfit or whatever, I wish I could just put on my blue beard because it looked pretty cool,
I
I
think
don't want a beard at the moment.
I think I hold the title for doing weird things and like changing, like, I'm not wearing pointy elf ears or making my beard blue, but I've done other things.
Yeah, you sure have. Yeah. Bless. Yeah. Care to elaborate for those who don't know as much as I do?
I think most people in the chat and here probably know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen the pictures.
There's plenty of photos out there.
Yeah, fair enough.
My doctor just asked about them recently, though.
Oh?
After 10 years of seeing this doctor, at the clinic, the HIV clinic I go to. I've been going to that clinic for 10 years. Back in January was my last appointment. And after all these years, she finally asked. She was like, "So those, I was like, did you just notice?" She said, "No, I just," I was like, "Okay."
So what do you think prompted then? I mean, because 10 years, that's a long time for curiosity to build up. I mean,
I've put on weight over the last about year and a half. Like most of my adult life, I was just like 140, 150 pounds. Back in January, I was tipping the scales at almost 200.
Wow.
So that's a lot of weight. Right now, I'm like mid 180s. So I'm trying to shave it off. So weight gain for most people, and a lot of women will understand this. Weight gain goes to two places. Well, three, but there's two that are pretty obvious. That's the breasts and the belly. So I put on a lot of weight, and so she was like, "Yeah, no, I really have to ask." So yeah, so I told her, I said, yeah, surprised that you didn't ask before. So then she asked how I identify, how I want to be referred to, and pronouns and all that stuff. And I was just like, I'm not. They're words. They don't matter so much to me. They're just words. So.
I mean, I technically, don't you identify as gender fluid?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, she said, "Do you identify as a man or a woman?" And I said, "Neither and both."
Right.
And she said, "Oh, okay." So she said, "So gender fluid, non-binary." And I said, "Yeah." She said, okay. You know, but yeah, she asked about pronouns, and I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people that refer to me as she, and most he for obvious reasons. But
Mm.
yeah, so whatever. It is what it is. But again, it's a lot different than a blue beard or elf ears, which I want elf ears, by the way. Who was it that said that? Oh yeah, Ava. I want elf ears. So yeah.
I would have done elf ears, but I have to take my piercings out. I'm too vain for that.
Oh yeah. Everybody got quiet. You can talk
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Someone else talk. I spent too much time talking.
Well, I wanted to actually, I was kind of hoping to come on tonight because I don't know if you've heard about what's happened in Michigan here with the protests that they had earlier this week, this Operation Gridlock.
The whole world heard about it, love.
I know. Oh my gosh. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, I get the idea, but really? And a
Well,
lot
Who
and
are
like,
who are they gridlocking? There's no cars on the fucking road.
Well,
yeah, they're gridlocking emergency vehicles. That's what they're gridlocking.
Right.
yeah, and actually there was one ambulance worker that did complain about that. They did. But our governor also with some of her bans, one of them is that she has banned people from shopping for gardening, carpeting, paints, like anything to do like around the outside the house or inside the house. So in some stores like Walmart or wherever, they've had it initially, they actually had it like taped off.
No, yeah, I thought it would. I thought that applied to like gardening shops. Like you still go to Home Depot and get all that stuff.
Kind of yes and no. I've heard different stories on that.
I think that might have been the intention. I think maybe retailers decided to. That would make more sense to me.
Yeah, it would, but it just seemed that a lot of people were like, "Wait a minute, what? Why?"
Yeah, well, it's like here in New Jersey, the state parks are closed, and there are a lot of people protesting about that. But the thing is, I mean, New Jersey is the densest populated state in the country.
Sure.
There are more people in New Jersey per square mile than anywhere else in the country. So our state parks get packed.
Right.
I mean, so you can't social distance when you're standing shoulder to shoulder in a field.
Right.
So it makes sense to close the state parks. I live in a rural area, and we have the Appalachian Trail, and people are walking the trail in large groups. And it's like, well, if you're walking the trail in a large group, you're not social distancing. So they closed the Appalachian Trail, which I think is the first time in its history it's been closed.
Oh, wow.
At least where it goes through my county. But yeah, I mean, and people are upset and they're protesting and they're passing petitions. And it's just like, they're saying our rights are being infringed. But you don't have, those are rights that don't really, I mean, they don't exist in the legal way. Like, I've got a right to do this. Yeah, kind of, yeah. But like, there's no legally protected right to go to a specific park. You just don't have that. So.
There's the right for basic movement, but not specific parks. Yeah.
Right. And even like basic movement is there's restrictions on that. Like you don't have a right. Even if you have a driver's license, you don't have a right to drive your car on public roads. At all times. You just don't have that right. The only freedom of movement that you really have is by horse or by foot.
Right. So the other thing that I've noticed too is I've been seeing some posts on Twitter about, I forgot who was Governor de Blasio was saying about some kind of weird tweet about, you can call this number so you can narc on people who are not doing social distancing. Like, really?
Well, I mean, in New York City, it's an issue. I mean, yeah. There's a lot of people in New York City.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like in the city proper, which is a very small area. New York City, when you talk about, because like cities are weird. I mean, when I was a kid, the city was the city, and that's all it was. We don't look at cities that way anymore. Cities are now areas. So like the city proper is a very small area, and in that tiny little area, there's 8 million people. in New York City, as in the area of New York City, that encompasses the entire state of New Jersey. And you're talking like 20 million people or so. It's a lot of people. So if there are people in New York City, especially in the city proper, that are doing things that are violating the social distancing guidelines and the lockdown guidelines, they're endangering literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So yeah, Markham, call. Call. You know, I mean, there's no excuse. There's no excuse.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we're ever going to get through this thing, we have to all do it in the same motion. You know what I mean? I find it amusing and how people say, oh, you know, I mean, all the like politicians will give you all this rhetoric about how, you know, Americans can do anything when we work together. And I actually believe that that is more true than it is false. But the thing is, it doesn't necessarily happen. That's not true. I mean, it's that it happens isn't necessarily true.
Right.
That it would be better if it did happen. That's true. You know what I mean? But I just don't know if I think the country's so fractured right now in terms of like ideology and also region. You know, the two things together play against each other. You know, and Trump exacerbates that with his partisanship and favoring the like in Arizona and Colorado, both the governors were asking for PPE and stuff, and Trump said no to the governors and then gave it to his Republican senators in the same states instead, so the senators can take the credit for getting it from the government. It's like
it's a game.
Yeah, it is a game. I agree.
Hang on, I want to address something in the chat, if that's all right.
Sure.
My dog said that what I said before was wrong, because what good comes from arresting and or finding people, and that prison is the worst place to be during a pandemic. And you'll become a surveillance minion for the state. Wrong on all counts, and here's why. What good comes of arresting and or finding people? Well, you don't have to arrest or find them. The police have functions and tools at their disposal beyond making arrests or writing tickets. You can break up the gathering and send everyone back. If you need to arrest or you need to write a ticket or find them, that can serve as discouragement to other people. So you're now putting a negative incentive on doing things that endanger other people. Like you can't walk around with a grenade with a pin pulled out, and going out when you could possibly be carrying the virus isn't a whole lot different. You're endangering the people around you, and that needs to be dealt with. If you do get arrested by the police in New York City, you won't go to prison. You don't get arrested and go to prison. That's not how law enforcement works. You get arrested and they take you in and they do your paperwork, and most of the time they send you home. If you have to be detained for any length of time, you're in a jail cell, depending on where, possibly sometimes by yourself, sometimes with a few other people, but you're not in a prison. You're in a jail cell. And becoming a minion for the surveillance state, no, you're protecting yourself and your family from getting sick and dying. I don't know about you, but my family is worth it. I totally want to protect my family enough that I would call to break up a large group of people. Yes.
Yeah, I want to raise awareness as well. I mean, the Green Machine just said that Typhoid Mary thought that she was having her rights violated too, and that's interesting because I just read about Typhoid Mary yesterday, and that's exactly what happened. She didn't tell the authorities. She kept jumping around from place to place and kept knowing she was going to infect people and doing it anyway because she didn't want to lose her employment. Shocking. So yeah, and that was like what 100 years ago.
Well, something that I get concerned about is when I hear about, like in Quebec, their police are fining people for traveling in their vehicles. They're not getting out of the vehicles. They just want to go for a drive.
Yeah, it's messed
and
up.
Police are pulling people over and fining them just for going for a drive. And I think that's unreasonable.
Yeah, in different places in the U.S. also, and I'm sure in Canada too, obviously. But there are certain places in the U.S., certain districts, certain townships and cities, whatever. A lot of that stuff will be local ordinances. There are laws about joyriding, like you just can't get in your car and drive with no place to go. I believe that it's seen the same way as loitering. I think it's looked at in a similar way. Josh knows more about the law than I do, so I don't know. He might have an opinion or know something about that. I don't know.
Well,
But,
I mean,
yeah.
this has to do with the it has to do with social distancing and the quarantine is why this is being done to some people. And I just don't understand how stopping people from just driving.
The thinking
Or how
is,
would they know? My question is how would they know?
yeah, no, the thinking is that they're going somewhere. So if they see you on the road driving, you must be going someplace. So they're going to pull you over, and they say, "Where are you going?" Just driving. No, really, where are you going?
One person was given a mother and her 16 or 17-year-old daughter. She was wanting to take her out because she had a driving permit and try to give her some driving lessons, and police gave an initial fine of over $1,600 because they were driving without having a destination, and you're not supposed to do that.
What state is this in?
I'm trying to remember where that was. I don't know if that was in Quebec or where. I'm trying to remember where that was, but
That's nuts.
It is.
It's the perfect time. If your kid's got a permit, in my opinion, this is the perfect time to take them out.
Yep.
The roads are pretty
Yeah,
empty.
no traffic. Exactly.
Unless you're in Michigan.
well, we got to deal with the potholes in Michigan. That's the only problem there. Then you're
Well,
really
you can't drive. You can't drive in Lansing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I think here in Michigan they were talking about fines or implementing something like that if you're just driving anywhere. And I think like Doug said, I think it's definitely a case by case depending on the city and how strict they want to be with it. Which I could see that.
Yeah, so I'd be interested to get that story, because Quebec should have fairly similar laws to the United States, but I definitely don't know how the Canadian laws are written or enforced. But I'd still be interested in seeing how that might apply to American law. Because, I mean, for me to have an opinion about a law, I'd have to be familiar with where it is, like how it's applied, under what section it's justified. So, yeah, I'd want to know more before I gave an actual opinion about it.
I tried.
Yeah, I can't. I found the Twitter post of it.
Yeah, send it to me.
I can't see where. It doesn't. It's not showing where it was, but it's showing the actual ticket that they were given.
Yeah, send it to me off chat. Just all the information, and then some other time, maybe next week, if we do this again next week, I can talk about it or speak to it at least a little bit.
Okay.
Because that is interesting. Because I don't. That seems like a law without a justification. Because
yeah, it's a victimless crime.
You're still socially distancing while you're in your car with people who you live with. Like I don't see how that would be any violation of the law. So that'd be interesting to see how it's justified.
Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of people in my town complaining about people driving, and it's just like, who are they hurting? You think you're going to get COVID-19 because they drove past your house? It's really, I mean, some people are really ridiculous about it. Like I said, if I see a lot of people hanging out in a group, yeah, I might do something about that because they're endangering other people, and I could be the next one in danger.
Yeah, true.
Driving by in a car, why should I care? Why should anybody care? Why is it anybody's business?
Yeah, in Utah, it feels like everybody's not giving a damn, though. It kind of sucks. I was just at the grocery store to grab one thing, but so I'm contributing to the problem in this case. But there were that's the busiest I think I've ever seen a grocery store that's not Christmas time.
Wow.
And it's just like, I think everybody doesn't do anything during the week and then sees all their shopping for Saturday. So then it becomes like COVID Saturdays.
Jeez. when it comes to the driving thing, I posted about it on Facebook, and there were people that were saying, well, some of the reason that it's bad is because you might have to go get gas more often, and when you go to get gas, you're chancing spreading it. And if you get into a car accident, then the police and possibly medical units have to get involved. And so that's some of the excuses that people are giving for it. That's some of the, to me, that doesn't fly. But
yeah, that's a really bad legal justification.
Yeah, no, personally, I'm okay with a certain amount of if. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to see large groups of people hanging around outside, because there's the chance, like, if, I don't want to, but when you start stretching it out to, if you touch an infected gas nozzle, because you might maybe possibly have to get gas, and what if maybe possibly you get into an accident, and maybe possibly, okay, now you're now I mean, there comes a point, like it's infinite regress. I mean, you can just keep going back. What if,
Yeah, it's impossible to eliminate risk from life.
Yeah, and hanging out in groups, I think you could define that legally as reckless, because that's reckless behavior when it comes to getting sick. But where you're talking about driving around, that's involuntary if you get in an accident, involuntary if for all the other what ifs.
And I live in New Jersey, so I don't have to touch a gas pump. So, yeah.
I haven't had a car for 30 years.
Wow.
So, yeah.
No, I don't remember the last time I pumped gas. It's been a while.
So many places in the United States, cars are needed. Having a car is a necessity in so many places here. It's too bad too, but
even in my hometown in Santa Rosa, you can't get around without a car. I mean, there is such a thing as public transport, but it's virtually useless and kind of expensive. I mean, here in it's not just London, and all over Europe, not every city is as good as every other city, but they do have really decent public transportation in a lot of European cities. And London is got to be close to the top of the list. So I don't even like cities in general. I think cities are dirty for the most part and just not pleasant. And I don't like urban life. But London fucking rocks. Yeah. I love it. I can't help but love it. And the public transportation is part of it for me personally, because I need it, and it's pretty cheap as compared to everywhere else in the country. Anyway, it's way cheaper than everywhere else in the country. And like, there's no place you can't get to on public transport. And this city's huge. It's like 30 miles tall and 40 miles wide. You know what I mean? It's a big city.
Yeah, the road system there looks like a pile of spaghetti random spaghetti thrown on a plate.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to navigate the roads there and trying to figure out where you are, because there's not even, I don't think anywhere in London, I don't think there's even a point where there's a three or 4 block radius that's a straight line.
You couldn't pay me to actually drive in London. Even if I did have a driver's license and a car over here, I wouldn't be driving living in London. You don't need a car in London. It's superfluous. It costs you more money to park your car than it does to take public transport. And that's not including the gas and the registration and the fucking insurance and everything else. It just doesn't make sense to have a car in London. It really doesn't.
I can identify with that. When I used to live in Korea back in early 2000s, I got so spoiled with the public transportation there. I absolutely loved it. The subways are efficient, the bus system, the taxis. I mean, I totally got spoiled, and I kind of missed that. So I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. Now, I live in a rural. I live in a rural area, and it's all of the roads are all twisted and turns and hills and valleys and everything else here. So. And we don't have public transit. Right. We only have sidewalks. No, there's no sidewalks. There's no street lights. There's no public transit. There's Uber. If you want to pay, a car is a necessity here.
Yeah.
Now, something Mage Grey Wolf just said is they said, I wouldn't want to take public transit in this. And I'm wondering if this pandemic is going to affect people's viewpoints of public transportation.
Well, it's one of the main spreaders here, that's for sure. Because and I ride every day when I was going to work. before the lockdown. I ride a small section of the tube. I only got 2 stops, but it's not like a huge section. But the train is always packed, right? And the last 2 weeks before the actual lockdown happened, the train was getting less and less crowded every day. And the week before, well, a couple days before the lockdown, there was only like maybe 8 or 10 people on a carriage, which would normally have like 100 people on it. So there was, hardly any of us left going to work anymore because a lot of people were, being called to work from home and stuff instead. So what they fucking idiotic fucking transportation system did, because of course they've got the drivers to think about as well. So they said, okay, well, now that there's fewer people riding the public transportation, we're going to cut the service in half, which meant the trains were crowded again. And then everybody just right when the virus was spreading the most. I'm just like, that doesn't. I could have figured that out, and I'm not a train guy. Do you know what I mean? So I don't understand how come the train people didn't realize that was going to happen. I just get. Sometimes, honestly, like I said last time, sometimes I can't help but think there's malice in this whole situation because, like, the steps that this government takes in this country, you could be forgiven for thinking they want more people to get sick and die. And I feel the same way about the steps that are going in America. To me, it makes more sense if they're being malicious because what they're doing is causing more deaths, and they should be able to predict that based on what they know their behavior will do. Because they know, like Trump telling these people to go out and protest, that behavior is going to cause death.
Yeah.
Therefore, it must be intentional, right? How is that not intentional? Am I overreacting? I know I'm biased, guys, so I try to check myself. This is one of the reasons I like asking y'all, right? Because, I know I'm biased. I know I am. So it's a good idea to bounce stuff off other people.
I guess some of the people that are promoting this will say, oh, they're standing on principle, will be their argument.
Which principle are they standing on?
They'll say the principle of freedom of movement, and being able to live your life how you want, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's at home, not being controlled by the establishment type of stuff too. I hear that from a lot of libertarians lately on that note.
I would just like to point out in relationship to that, and I'm not the first person to make this point. I find it very interesting that all these right wingers, are saying, "Hey, you can't tell me what to do with my own body."
And then they turn around and want to tell women what to do with that, what they can do with their own body.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
You got it. It's a contradiction. It really is.
Yeah, this whole thing's thrown so many issues into pretty sharp relief, and I think it's really sort of put a magnifying glass on not just the issues and why they're so toxic, but where the toxicity really is. You know what I mean? Because you're not wrong for wanting to be the sovereign of your own body. That's not wrong, right? But you are wrong for thinking that you have the right to infect other people with a disease. That part's the wrong part. The right that they think they have, they're not wrong about that. But you're not absolved of social responsibility when you live in a country full of other people.
Right to swing your fist.
Right. You don't
have
to swing your fist. We all have. The thing is, I operate on 2 basic axioms. I am the sovereign of my own body. That's my first axiom, which is where I personally think I derive all my rights from. I'm in charge of me, so I have the right to say what I want, go where I want, do what I want, blah, blah, blah. My freedom emanates from the fact that I exist, right? Nobody gave it to me. It emanates from that fact. And if other people limit it, it's only because I allow that to happen, even if that's brutally. It's still because I allow it. You know what I mean? I could die defending my liberty, I suppose, or whatever. And I'm digressing. So I'm in charge of me. I'm the sovereign of my own body. That's my foundational axiom. My secondary foundational axiom is we are all in this together. We depend on each other. That's just true. It doesn't matter if you don't want to. People want to say, oh, I'm so self-sufficient. Oh, great. Stop using the roads and electricity then. Do you know what I mean?
I was going to say that, your 2 axioms can, in many instances, contradict.
That's exactly right.
Right.
And so
You have to make those compromises.
that's my point exactly, Dev. That's exactly right, because they are fundamentally opposed, in fact, because in order sometimes to acknowledge your responsibility to the group, you have to sacrifice some of your own sovereignty in order to make that accommodation. And likewise, sometimes the group has to allow for the fact that you're not asking for too much, just because, say, for example, you want to say a word that most people find offensive or some stupid shit like that. I don't know. That's a bad example, but it's something I could think of off the top of my head.
Well, something that goes through my head is, okay, so your rights end when they infringe upon someone else's.
Right.
Too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But like, when it comes to what do you as an individual owe to society is the fundamental question these people are, forcing us to ask. Do you have no responsibility to your fellow citizens? I don't think that's the case. I think we owe it to ourselves to try to get along. It's in everybody's interest for us to look after each other. It's as simple as that. It just makes sense to be compassionate. It just makes sense to be kind. It's not only a nice philosophy, it'll make your life better in the practice. It's so obvious to me. I just don't see why people just can't just chill the fuck out. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, it's because you have a broad in group. A lot of people have much smaller in groups where rules apply and don't apply.
Thank you. I guess I'll take that as a compliment as well. I mean, yeah, because my in group is all of us. I mean, people are people to me, right? I mean, I try my very best to include my we as the whole world. You know what I mean? But obviously, there's I'm a human being, and I've just like y'all. I'm sure I've got a hierarchy of people I care about. I've got a small group of people, then a slightly larger group of people, and a slightly larger group of people, then the world. That kind of thing. I mean, I'm not so full of shit or pretentious that I'm going to pretend I love the whole world as much as my kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and speaking about caring stuff, what I did today, I went and bought some groceries for my parents because they're at that age level where they're sort of like at risk. And I feel good doing that. I feel good that I can actually have a chance to do that because, hey, they feel good about it. They think my mom was like, oh, thank you for doing that. But it's like, hey, this is something that we got to do for now. It kind of sucks. We can't really hang out with each other like we want to, which it really does suck. But at the same time, hey, I can help you out. And then, we can help each other out that way. And I think that's what I like to see more of and hear more stories of is just people helping each other out. There needs to be, and I agree with you on that. There needs to be so much more.
I'm kind of selfish. I mean, I don't know. I want these people to not be a bunch of assholes because I already survived one plague.
Right.
I don't want this one to take me out.
Right.
So. You got a good argument there.
Well, that's a thought. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I remember when I was a kid and we were learning about the plague in Europe back in I guess it was the 14th century when they had in mainland Europe. And I remember thinking, oh, what would it be like to live in a plague? And now I know, and it's not fun, that's for sure. But what I find it would be bad enough if it was just the loneliness of isolation and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff, all that personal stuff. But what makes me the most angry is I feel just like completely helpless because of how badly the leaders are handling the situation, and like there's almost no solutions that you can do from home against that. You just have to let these guys drive the bus that you're on. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, they're careering all over the goddamn road. You know what I mean? And it's like they're drunk or something. And that's how I feel. I feel like I'm in a vehicle with someone who's driving drunk and there's not a goddamn thing I can do but hope that we don't hit somebody or get in an accident.
Yeah, I'm a bit cynical about it. I think the other shoe is about to drop. And with that, I'm saying goodbye.
All right, Josh. Thanks for
Josh.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next week or next time we do this.
Nice one. Take it easy.
Man, people come and go so quickly around here.
Right.
a revolving door.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised Joe didn't show up tonight, but that's all right. He'll be here next time, I'm sure. He's very keen on these. He really likes these, you know.
Well, and they are fun. I mean, one of the things I think, what's for me personally, it's like I finally get to interact with you guys. You know, in this form, instead of just a video, we're doing like a roundtable discussion. So I personally love it. And I'm hoping when this is done that we can meet in person, because I would absolutely love to meet you guys in person now.
I had a feeling, and I mean, I'm not saying that it has anything to do with me, but I kind of feel like it might. Had a feeling that Bionic Dance would not show up.
All right.
She and I had a falling out many years ago. It was really brutal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then she went and told a bunch of people I was semi-retarded, and I was like, okay, right, whatever, fuck you. But whatever.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's difficult. You know, the YouTube community that I am a part of, from which I have drawn most of the Breakfast Club people, you know, goes back to 2009, and over the course of those 11 years, there's been so many different personality conflicts that I wouldn't like to count them or catalog them all, really. And I find it interesting and unfortunate, but also inevitable. I mean, you know, it's like having 200 roommates. You know, if you have 200 roommates, sometimes you're going to have personality conflicts. It doesn't matter how much you agree on, you're going to disagree on some stuff. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. And my attitude is, I mean, the way I approach living in general, it's not just the internet, it's in life as well. I mean, I don't have to agree with someone. I don't have to. I'm not really invested in changing someone's mind. I'll give it a shot, but I'm just going to say my bit and let them go. You know what I mean?
My thing is, I used to want to change people's minds. Y'all remember that. I know you guys remember. We talked about it a little bit last time.
Yeah.
But now, I'll still argue, but it's less that I want them to change their minds and more that I just want them to understand mine. You know what I mean? Like, I might seem even still as aggressive as I used to be, and it might be true, but it's for a different purpose. It's not, you're going to think what you're going to think, whatever, and I'm not going to change that. But before you walk away, I want you to understand where I'm coming from.
Sure.
And, you know, and
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
You know what I mean?
Well, I do, yeah.
You, and you think about it later, that's all you know, and that's all gravy. But, you know.
Well, yeah, if I can open someone's mind, that's almost better than changing it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, I don't honestly, and I made this point years ago to someone on the internet who shall remain nameless. But, you know, I've never really met anyone in my life, and I don't think I have myself. I've never met anybody who has changed their mind as the result of arguing. Just arguing. One argument is not going to change someone's mind. It needs to be accumulation of argumentation and observation. And it's not just going to be one argument where you're going to go, oh, I have seen the light because this person said this thing. You know,
I was going to disagree.
Well, it takes observation as well, and maybe a little bit of reflection. It's not going to happen on the spot.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I was going to disagree until you added in that because I had gotten into arguments with people online where later I was like, oh, I'm wrong.
Right.
Oh, well, shit.
Well, I've had plenty of there have been at least 5 times where someone had such a good argument that I changed my position right during that conversation. It's happened to me.
It's happened to me twice
can't say,
on YouTube. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say, I can't say it's happened very often the other way around, but I know for the sake of my changing my mind, I know it's happened about 5 times or so, just within the same argument. So,
right. I've changed my mind twice based on arguments I've witnessed and or been a part of on YouTube. It's going back quite a while now. Because when I used to have my body piercing studio, I would obviously with parents' permission, I would pierce minors with their parents' permission. So if someone brings me their 10-year-old kid wants me to pierce their ears, I'm going to pierce their kid's ears or whatever, right? That's just ear piercing, though. I wouldn't pierce other parts of the body, just ear piercing, right, for kids. But that would go right down to infants and stuff. I mean, you bring me your 6-month-old baby for the ear piercing. The thinking of the parent, which I understand as a parent, is this kid's never going to remember this, and it's barely going to hurt. So let's do it now, so they'll have them their whole life, and it won't matter because they'll always have them, and they'll never remember the pain. That's the argument, and I get the argument. Anyway, so back in 09, maybe it was 10, but I think it was 09. I was witness to a series of videos about circumcision, FGM and male circumcision, and the arguments against circumcision basically apply to body piercing as well, i.e., you're doing that shit to someone without their knowledge or consent, and they haven't even got the slightest idea to make a decision about it in any way, and that's not okay. A baby is still a person, even though it's a baby, it's still a person, and so they should have at least a slight understanding. And so basically, I changed my policy, and I wouldn't pierce any child that couldn't ask me for the piercing themselves. So that usually meant about 3 or 4. And that would be with their parents' support, obviously, as well. But I mean, like, I stopped piercing babies completely because the baby, you can't ask a baby. You just can't. So I changed my mind because those conversations really sort of opened my mind up because, like, I mean, I never really, I was circumcised as a baby and I never had a grudge about it. Never in my life. I still don't. However, I'll never know what I'm missing. You know what I mean? I'll never know.
Yeah.
I'll never know. So I don't.
My oldest.
I don't know.
My oldest is circumcised, and I didn't know better. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was came time to, when they asked for the consent to do it. My now ex-wife and I, we didn't do a whole lot of talking about it or thinking about it. It was just like, well, yeah, well, why not? I am. I mean, that's. Yeah, don't you just do it?
Well, literally, I think when I was born, you had to ask them not to do it.
Yeah, no, and Damon is not, and it was for that reason. He doesn't have the ability to consent. He doesn't know, and he can't consent. And it's, what right do I have, or anybody else? What right do we have to alter his body?
Well, my whole thing with my son's not circumcised. My whole thing was, it's natural. What's wrong with nature? It's just natural. If that's the way you're born, why not keep it that way? If there's a problem later, you can sort that out later, but it's nature. Why change nature? Nature's actually beautiful, like most of the time,
Most of the time. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, anyway, but so that's the first time I changed my mind, and the second time I changed my mind based on a YouTube conversation was two separate videos. One was by Divinity 33372, and the other one was by this chick I used to watch. Her name at the time was Gata Aggressiva 411, and there's basically they didn't even know that the other one made the video. They didn't have anything to do with each other, but they both made videos around about the same sort of time about the same topic, and that was whether or not men should tell women they don't know to smile. Now, I used to do that shit all my whole life. I used to see a chick that looked like she was thinking off in a far distance, and I go, oh, smile, and I thought I was being nice. I actually bought into this idea that you're spreading joy into the world and blah, blah, blah. No, you're telling someone what to do with their face to make you happy. That's what you're doing. It's not okay. It's not okay. Why should I rearrange my face for you? Shut the fuck up. Now I see it, but I didn't see it for years and years and years. And I used to do that shit all the time, so I really changed my mind. Dud.
Yeah. Well, okay, I agree. I agree. When you tell somebody to smile when they're not smiling, and hey, smile. Yeah, you're asking somebody to rearrange their face to make you happy. Correct. The only problem that I've ever had with that argument is when the accusation of the argument is that it's only said to women.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, it's just
that's
like
true.
that's
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yes, I can see how a lot of women feel that way. Yes, I can see how they can say that it's bullshit for men to tell them to smile, especially when it's coupled with "you'd be prettier if you smiled more."
Yeah. Right. Oh God.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
and it also depends on the tone of voice that's used. Because if it's used in a condescending
Yeah.
way, it's
Absolutely.
like, no, smack.
So, and while I agree with it all, when I hear the argument being made, it kind of puts me off a little because I am also guilty of the "hey, why don't you smile" thing.
Mhm.
But to everybody, I don't discriminate. You know, who I am being an asshole to, I guess.
Well, see, I
But
never
but I
thought of it as
agree, it's
being an
asshole.
asshole. I never thought of it as being an
Yeah,
asshole, though.
no,
I used
I
to
didn't
really
either.
think of it as like, hey, you know, just I've noticed you. I've noticed you. Cheer up. You're not alone. You know, there's a person in the world who thinks, hey, be happy. But I mean, I was genuinely coming from a really good place. I really was.
Sure.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily matter where you're coming from. It matters more to the point of all of the implicit assumptions that go into the idea that you know, that someone else's mood. I mean, like, you don't know what they're thinking about. They could be thinking about the fact their mom just died or some shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all that. Don't never assume.
And then
Never
you say
assume.
smile, and you want to get slapped in the face. You know.
And that whole dynamic then changes if it's somebody that you know, and it's somebody that you know well, and it's somebody that you
Sure,
know
of course.
where they're at,
Yeah,
where they're
it
coming
does.
from, what they're going through. Yeah, sure.
I agree 100%. Context
But
is everything.
yeah, but the whole random, yeah, yeah, that's it's douchey, and I'm guilty.
Yeah,
You know,
I've done it so many
yeah.
times. But I don't do it. Ever since those conversations, I stopped doing it. I'm like, you know what? I can spread the same kind of joy, but in a different way. You know, ask the question rather than make the demand. How are you? You know what I mean?
Right.
It works the same. It works the same. It accomplishes the same thing. And it actually extends empathy instead of makes a demand, you know? So,
Well, it's funny that we don't see it as a demand, but it is. It's a demand. You know,
right.
fuck you, smile.
Yeah. Yeah. The world
Have a nice day.
Yeah,
Damn it,
right.
hey, damn it.
Yeah.
You better have a nice day or else.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty
Shut
of
up and have a
nice
good
day.
time.
Have a nice day to me is so second nature that I've never been able to shake it. Even though they don't say it in this country, typically anyway, I say it still, even after 30 years of being here. I can't help it. And a lot of
If it's a habit, yeah, that makes sense. If it's like a habit, or I always do like a have a good day type of thing too. Sometimes even just saying something like that makes a person's day anymore.
Well, I mean, in different parts of the world, that is what farewells usually are. I mean, adieu, which is French, means to God. Same with adios, to God. You know, we're going to God. You know, that's wish you to God and all that. Farewell, good day in Australia. You know what I mean? I mean, it's normal to say farewell in a nice, friendly way. Have a good day is just another one of those ways, right? Farewell. It's the same thing.
But the wording of it, like Green Machine is saying about, why don't you smile, or hey, smile. Have a nice day. The wording in that is also
It's a command.
it's a demand.
Yeah.
It's not a well wish. It's telling you
Yeah.
you have to do something. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
You're putting this burden on this. No, screw you. What if I want to have a lousy day?
Yeah. So all you'd have to do, therefore, is just say hope ahead of it. Say, hope you have a nice day.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I do that.
Then that's a blessing, isn't it?
How about someone saying, enjoy your next 24 hours?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Hope later doesn't suck.
But this also goes to not only what is said, but it goes with the tone of voice. Now, I'm particularly sensitive to tone of voices because, like, when I first started teaching at my job, that was one thing they emphasized. And I heard it from my manager, and I actually had students complain because certain aspects of my voice, that especially if they weren't familiar with it, came out kind of strong or kind of angry. But I'm very passionate and I'm very excited about what I do. So, and once they started to get to know me and they realized, oh, wait a minute. maybe it's just how that person is. But I had to actually take a step back and go, listen to myself, which is very hard to do when you have to listen to yourself. It's horrendous. But I learned, like, oh, maybe I should do that. And I've also learned over time, even if you're like in leadership positions, the tone of voice does matter.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because you can come out with something and totally mean it to be one thing, and then to the other person it could be a totally, you went totally off the rails.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I used to be a DJ for years and years, and so I made my living with my voice. And yeah, you can delivery matters a hell of a lot, and it's especially true. You can really notice it when you're raising kids, especially because you can get a lot of better results if you just pay attention to how you're talking to your kids. It's not so much what you say; it's how you say it, as to whether or not you've got their attention. Like with children in particular of a certain age, you're going to get their attention way quicker if you whisper to them than if you raise your voice. And it's a trick, but it really worked. It really worked for me anyway. Just whisper, and they ask you what you're saying, rather than make an order or whatever like that. I think you get way better attention like that, personally. But I don't know. Don't get me wrong. I made plenty of mistakes when I was raising my kids, like all parents do. No such thing as a perfect parent. No such thing as a perfect kid. But I feel very strongly that the things I got right, I knocked it out of the park with. You know what I mean? There's quite a few things that I did. I think, goddamn, man, I should put that in a book or something, because it really, really worked. I'll give you one right now, right, Rob? Since you're a parent as well. When my kids were little, and I'm talking about 4 and 5 upwards, I said to them, now check this out. When you get to be 11, 12, maybe 13 at the latest, all of a sudden, and for no reason at all, you're just going to wake up one day and go, God, Dad is really full of shit, And I warned them. I said, this is going to happen. You're going to think I'm the greatest thing in the world, and all of a sudden, you're just going to go, God, my dad is a dick. And it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I warned him about it repeatedly over the years. And then when it happened, which of course it did, because it's just part of growing up.
Part of life, yeah.
I'd be like, Falcon, you're being 14 again. He's like, shit. But he turned out around on me one night because I was bitching about some woman problem I was having, because I was a bit of a player in my mid 40s, right? And so I was bitching about something or other, and he's like, Dad. And I'm like, what? And he goes, 45. I'm like, oh yeah, midlife crisis thing, isn't it? Yeah. So he pulled it back around on me, which I thought was pretty funny.
When my older two, when they were like really little, I never had to like yell. I didn't spank them. I was not like that at all. And they were very, I want to say, compliant. Like they did what I asked. They did what they were told. If I said be quiet, they were quiet. If I said go get this, they would go get it. If I said go to your room, they'd go to the room. And I thought I was doing such a great job. I'm doing such a great job. My kids are so well behaved. I am doing such a great job. What I didn't know is that they were terrified of me. And I found out one Christmas morning, we had a tree with a train going around it. And my son was 5 years old, comes running into the room, and he's like diving under the tree, and he knocked the train off the track. And he froze. And he turned around and looked at me and looked like he was about to burst out in tears. And he said, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And my heart shattered.
Right.
And I was just like, I am not doing a good job.
Right.
What looks like, this great relationship is they're afraid.
Right.
And I never did anything for them that I could ever identify, as far as, giving them reason to be afraid, but they were afraid.
And sometimes that's just because Dad is Dad. You know what I mean? I mean, Dad, there's a whole dynamic going on there.
I got to change the way I'm interacting with them.
Sure.
But it was like a awakening. Like, wow, I'm doing something wrong.
Right. Well, I raised my kids myself. I mean, when I got custody of my kids, they were 3 years old and 2 years old, so they're pretty small. And So I raise my kids. I think it's a mistake for when a woman's a single parent to say that she has to be a father and a son to her kids, and I think it's a mistake when a dad is a single parent to say he has to be a mother and a father to his children. But what I think that's a mistake. But what's not a mistake is the understanding that if you're a dad, you still have to provide that emotional support that they would normally associate with their mother. Emotional support is something every human being needs, and you need that at home, right? So I really try to be like what I would call, for a father anyway, a benevolent authority. I think from about the age of 5 or 6 onwards, I never had to punish my kids in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
And really, most before that, it was mostly just harsh admonishments. But I found out my secret, if you want to call it a secret, was I actually managed, before my kids were old enough to go to school, I managed to get them to give a shit about whether or not I was happy. And if your kids care about your happiness, they're not going to want you upset.
Right.
So you don't have to scare them, because they just don't want to see dad upset. You know what I mean? Because dad's happy all the time. So if dad's not happy, that's a fucking bummer. You know what I mean? And they don't want that to happen. So every time they would get that way, I'd be going, "Oh, guys, come on, man. We're having such a nice day." And boom, they would all turn around.
I think in general, as far as like society goes, Western society anyway, something that parents I think are getting better at today is treating their kids or relating to their children as people.
Right.
Right. When I was little, and I don't know if you had the experience yourself when you were a kid, because you're not that much older than me. But I'm sure you understand it. Children were looked at as possessions.
Sure.
They weren't people yet. They were possessions. They were kids. You did what you wanted to them. They were to be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
I think as a society we've come a long way. No, they're people, and they've got wants and desires and feelings and the whole thing that goes with it. I mean, they've got all of it. And if you're not relating to them as people, then you're doing wrong.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think
I
go ahead,
remember
sorry,
hearing. Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I remember when I was really little, I would hear different parents talking with each other, and I remember hearing the phrase, "Oh, you've got to break your kid's will," and I always thought that was just a horrible, horrible method of parenting.
Yeah.
That's awful. I mean, to actually be consciously aware that that's what you want to do to your kids. It's one thing if you do that to your kid, but you don't realize it because, I don't know, that's what happened to you when you were a kid. So you're doing what your parents did to you or whatever. I know that kind of thing happens. But to consciously be aware that you want to break your child's will, that's treating your child worse than a pet, or as if it's a pet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or not a pet, but a beast of burden. Like you have to bucko bronc a horse before you can break a horse in, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was just like, wow. I can't
that mindset still floats around. It still makes its rounds here in the States.
It's not as prevalent as it used to be.
But it's
the
sure
idea
common.
of children's rights have come a long, long way, since we were young. But yeah, it's still around.
One of the places that you hear it the most or see it the most are in religious communities.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact for y'all, right? I divorced my parents in court when I was a teenager.
Wow.
Deb's face is like, whoa. Yeah. I became an emancipated minor. That was all pretty heavy. Yeah, my teenage years were pretty hard at home, really. So I ran away from home, and then some months later, my dad came up and got me with his fucking gun and shit, and it was all fucking heavy duty. And then I went to court and became emancipated. It was only like 4 or 5 months before I turned 18 anyway. So the judge was like, "Yeah, whatever, go on."
Wow.
My parents didn't show up for the court case anyway, so I was definitely going to win because they didn't even show up. But
Mage Grey Wolf saying, "I was hit when I was a kid and turned out okay" is such a bad argument. Yeah, it's a terrible argument. Terrible argument.
Well, everyone thinks they turned out okay. I mean, this is a funny thing about human beings. I mean, I'm very well aware of my faults, and I know I am only as honest as I want to be. And I think that's true for everybody. But most people will tell you that they're always honest, and that's just obviously not true.
We are all the heroes in our own
Right.
story.
Right, of course, right. I mean, but I like to think that I'm pretty realistic about myself and my faults and everything like that, and I accept them. And you know, I don't necessarily don't. It's not like I don't make any effort to get better, but at the same time, I'm not busting my ass to get better. You know, I'm pretty okay with who I am now. So, but when it comes to like, fuck, I lost my train of thought. What was I just gonna say? God damn. I was on a roll, and I rolled right off the track. I rolled right off the track. Oh, that's embarrassing, man. Literally, I can't even remember what I was saying.
I still wonder what I would have been like had I have had a masculine influence in my life. I mean, my dad died when I was 4, so I was basically raised by my mother and grandmother.
Sure.
And my grandmother was pretty abusive. And there were just so many things that I never learned how to deal with. I like bullying. I never learned how to properly deal with when I received bullying. I was like I was the laughing stock of my elementary school. Even the teachers, even some of the teachers would bully me and call me names right in front of the class. And I had no idea how to deal with it. So my mom actually had me go to an out of district school after that. And just so I didn't have to deal with the same kids.
I can tell you how to deal with bullying now, although it's obviously far too late. And number one, and number two would not be a popular answer, but I don't really care. I am a firm believer that the only way to deal with a bully is to punch him in the face. That's it, because that's all a bully understands. That's all a bully understands. People are like, oh no, you have to talk to the principal. And you have to do it. No. That's only going to cause more problems. I went through it. I went through it.
I went there too.
Turning them in and taking all of the the correct ways to do it, that only causes more problems. The only way to deal with a bully is to knock him on his ass. That is the only way.
I became a tattletale when I was, in elementary school, and that's the whole reason. That's one of the reasons why people picked on me more.
Yeah,
the more I became a tattletale, the worse it got. So.
Yep, exactly. It only makes it worse. I mean, I told, obviously not Damon. He's only 2, but my older kids. I mean, they're adults now, but when they were in school, I told them, if somebody messes with you, you pick something up and you hit them. If you have to pick up a desk and you have to knock your head off with a desk, then that's what you do. Don't go run and tell, because they'll wait for you at the bus stop. They'll wait for you outside the school. It'll only get worse.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid, my grandfather used to encourage me to get into fights, only because he said that sooner or later I would get into a fight, and the earlier I learn how to fight, the better it would be for me. So he said to pick a fight with someone, even if I know I'm going to get my ass kicked, just because I'll learn how to fight. Every time I get my ass kicked, I'll learn how to fight a little bit better. And he said, trust me, Paul, you only have to get beat up like 3 or 4 times and you'll be okay.
I understand the logic, but I don't agree.
My grandfather was a fighter when he was a kid, and I think the whole punch him in the face thing is, my granddad said the same thing to me, more or less. He said to me, look, if someone's fronting on you, which is colloquial where I come from for getting in your face, right? If someone's fronting on you, he said, and you think for sure that a fight's about to happen, make sure you get the first punch in, because if they hit you first, you might not get one.
You might not get the chance.
If you're pretty sure he's going to hit you, hit him first,
Well, that's not picking a fight. That's not picking a fight, though. That's
preemptive defense.
That's picking your punch. That's not picking your fight. Picking a fight is different, though.
I'm lucky enough to be able to honestly say that I've never hit anybody in anger in my life. So I've never had that moment, thank goodness. I've never been in a fight. I've been beat up, but I've never been in a fight.
Yeah, I've hit quite a few people in anger. I've never won a fight. I was always little.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you from somebody who was bullied pretty badly in elementary school too. It got to the point where it was so bad that I had a 4th grade teacher who stepped in and told my mom, I took karate for about like 6 months just to build up my self-esteem. And it wasn't until I chased my bully, and I literally chased her outside, because I used to go one way and everybody else went the other. It wasn't until she messed with me and I chased her. she didn't mess with me that much again, because that's, like you said, it's what they know. Once you confront them, it's like, okay, that's all I want. It's like, well, you asked for it. And then after that, as time went on, I developed that, but still, I always had that bully. So when people talk about bullying, it's like, yeah, I understand. I'm a survivor. Been there, done that. I get it.
The only way it is a constant of the universe that bullies speak one language, and if you do not speak to them in that language they understand, you're always going to have a problem with them.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably true. Yeah,
I think it's unfortunate that places like Cartoon Network and a number of other places on TV, they'll still continue to push this message of, oh, become a tattletale, tell an adult. It's just like, why are you still telling kids this terrible message? It doesn't
I'm not
work.
sure that's a terrible message. It's just not the most effective way in all situations to deal with it. I think at the end of the day, you can't tell people that they can't tell anybody, because that means there are going to be more victims, right? So I think giving children permission to tell is pretty important.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
I think their goal, I'm pretty sure that their goal is to avoid all fights, right? You want to avoid fights. So there's a logic to it where, this is a strategy that makes sense. But the reality on the ground doesn't fit that strategy. The reality is something different. Reality is, if you tell, it's only going to get worse. So
one of the reasons that violence proliferates in general is because it happens and people don't tell the authorities for whatever reason. They don't want to get involved, or they think, oh, it's not going to make a difference, or whatever. Like when I got assaulted, 12 years ago now, I got assaulted twice. And I didn't go to the cops the first time, but the second time he assaulted my shop, so I didn't have a choice. I had to get the cops involved. But just as a crime and punishment question, and I'm going to take the conversation in a slightly different way. Let's just say someone assaults you physically and kicks your ass, right? You don't get any broken bones or anything like that, but you got beat up pretty badly, right? And then you call the police on them, and they go to jail for assault. Right? Let's say they get convicted for assault. How much of your liberty do you exchange for one ass whooping? What's fair? What's fair? What's a fair price for that? Is a weekend too long? 2 weeks? 6 weeks? How much freedom is exchanged for one ass whooping? What's fair?
I'm actually not quite sure what you're asking.
Okay. What's the correct punishment? What would you consider a just punishment be for assault if it's only one ass whooping? You beat someone up, you don't break their bones or anything like that, but you kick their ass in front of people. You kick their ass. So it's not just that they've been beat up, you've humiliated them as well.
Right. The emotional damage of that is actually almost always greater than the physical damage. Unless they really fuck you up,
Yeah.
But most of the time, the emotional damage is greater. So I think there are a lot of factors to take into consideration. Like Phoenix Writer asking, who started the fight? If you started the fight and you kicked the person's ass, then I think there should be punishment should be harsher. Because you're
in my example, as I went into this on a video back in the day, but in my example, I got my ass kicked, and
that doesn't surprise me.
I got my ass kicked because I had been having an affair with this guy's girlfriend for like 6 months. Now you could argue all along that I deserve to have my ass kicked, but that's not actually true. It's not okay to commit violence because your feelings are hurt. It's just not.
Agreed. And I'm not. Like your gut wants to say one thing.
I know.
But your brain is like, that's wrong. Like you didn't deserve the beating. She did. She's the one that's in the relationship, not you. Like, you didn't do anything wrong.
It's still a shit thing to do. It's still a shit thing to
Well,
do.
exactly. That's what
I
I'm
knew it
saying.
was a shit thing to do at the time. There's no excuse for it
Well, yeah.
whatsoever, and I've never tried to justify it. It was a shit thing to fucking do. I was wrong to do it. Okay, cards on the table, 100%. I was being completely selfish and thinking of myself instead of other people. I was wrong, straight up. But I got my ass kicked for it, and I don't think that was okay. I just don't think it was. I've been cheated on by 5 different women in my life. Never once did it occur to me to beat up the other guy. Never once did it even cross my mind.
Okay, so yes, I agree. No one should have the right to use violence on anyone else because their feelings are hurt. Agree
Right.
100%. So I will not make any excuses for the violence as far as, she deserved it, you deserved it. No, that was wrong. But as far as who is wrong, and when you want to like place blame on different degrees, she out of the 3, she was the worst.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Like if you want to like say that, if you want to say like this was all a crime, just to make the argument make sense, she was the bigger criminal.
I agree. I absolutely agree, especially considering I know what happened at the time. She was definitely the worst of all of us. And I mean, all 3 of us got completely destroyed in the whole thing. It was just ruined 3 lives. It was a complete train wreck, right? There's no doubt about it. And I take my responsibility for my share in that. I've never shirked it. I knew what I was doing when I was doing it. I did it anyway. I couldn't have been more wrong. It's one of the wrongest things I've ever done in my life. Because I'm generally speaking not that kind of guy. But it never ceases to amaze me what happens to me when you get overcome with love. You know what I mean? I mean, it just changes you. It just changes you. It just makes you stop thinking in a normal way. It does actual chemical shit to your brain, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of, kind of, wow, I'm going to do it again. Kind of come full circle. Like I did last week. Anyway, we were talking in the beginning about COVID.
Right.
And now we're talking about love.
Right.
My ex-boyfriend, I rarely speak to. We split on really, really ugly, really bad terms. I've made videos about it. I mean, it was really, really ugly stuff. Anyway, I spoke to him recently a couple of times. His mom passed away the other day from coronavirus.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so he lives in Puerto Rico. He's in New Jersey, and he's like completely distraught. And he's an asshole. He's an asshole. But my heart is breaking for him, and I feel really bad. As I even said to Peach, I was just like, I feel really bad for the guy. Yeah, he's a dick. He's a dick, but my heart is breaking for him. But yeah, he was like, I was chatting with him. He's distraught. He's distraught. So anyway.
Wow. Is he still in Puerto Rico?
What happened?
Is he still in Puerto Rico?
Well, right now he's in New Jersey because his mom lived in New Jersey.
Right.
But
Okay.
yeah, he lives on the West Coast, Rincon. So,
Okay.
yeah. So.
Yeah. Listen, guys, I want to wrap up the chat. It's like 2:45 in the morning here. So I think I'm going to thank you all for your participation.
2 weeks in a row. I did this 2 weeks in a row now. I took it full circle and ended the show. 2 weeks.
That works for me. That works for me. I can deal with that. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say to the audience before we go?
This was completely unplanned.
Well, I have to say it's really kind of cool interacting with everyone, both in the chat, both with you guys. It's just been fantastic. I've enjoyed these discussions, getting a chance to listen and learning. I love the differences of opinion. I get a lot out of it more than people that agree with me. So this is fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for just setting this up. I'm so glad I've had this chance to do this.
Agreed.
Yeah,
cool.
I've missed.
All right. Well, I'll be back
so.
in touch again. So, just keep watching those inboxes, and the more the merrier,
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you guys in the audience as well for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again next week. All right. Peace and joy.